Chapter 3590. Buzz. Not long after, the Hall of Famers, the deputy leader, the leader, and the divine python couple appeared. The Hall of Famers laughed hoarsely. "We were just about to send you a message." Qin Feiyang and the madman looked at each other. Sure enough, it was understandable. After all, so many things had happened. As elders, they would definitely care about them first. The two of them didn't hide anything and told the leader and the others the whole story. During this time, the white-eyed wolf also joined the group chat. After that, knowing that Qin Feiyang and the others still had important matters to deal with, the leader and the others didn't delay any longer. They reminded them to be careful and turned off the voice transmission godstone. Xiaoyan already gave a simple explanation of the situation in the castle earlier. Actually, at the tea house, I had a feeling that this old man was a little incomprehensible. I thought it was an illusion, but I didn't expect that there really was a problem. The white-eyed wolf looked at Qin Feiyang and the madman and said, "Because it was the one who kidnapped the white-bearded old man. It had the most contact." Qin Feiyang waved his hand and said, "Let's not talk about this first. Has your energy C recovered?" "Yes." The white-eyed wolf nodded, then frowned and said, "It's strange. My recovery speed seems to be at least twice as fast as before." Qin Feiyang and the madman looked at each other, and then at the white-eyed wolf suspiciously. "For example, in the past it took me an hour to recover. Now it seems that I can do it in less than an hour." The white-eyed wolf explained, his face full of suspicion. "There's such a thing?" Qin Feiyang frowned. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and he said in surprise, "Could this be related to your bloodline power?" "I thought so too." The white-eyed wolf nodded. "No matter what, this is a good thing. We'll study it slowly in the future. Let's go to the tea house first." Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and two people and one wolf appeared above the sea. The white-eyed wolf immediately waved its paw, and a space-time crack appeared. The two men and one wolf rushed into the passage without looking back. In the next moment, they arrived at the entrance of the tea house. Several years passed. There were no changes in the tea house. Most of the people who came here were scholars. The sound of the zither was still melodious. "Isn't this young Master Qin, young Master Mo, and Lord Golden-Winged Wolf King?" It was the same red-clothed woman who had received Qin Feiyang last time. She quickly walked out and looked at Qin Feiyang, the young man, and the white-eyed wolf with a smile. "Qin Feiyang, Madman Mo, Golden-Winged Wolf King." When the guests sitting inside heard the woman in red's words, they looked toward the door and their expressions changed drastically. "Weren't you still fighting on White Crane Island? How did you come to the tea house so quickly?" "I heard that Qin Feiyang is also a tea lover. It seems that he was also attracted by the king of tea here, the Longjing tea." A few people whispered. "Wow, it's really them. They are indeed extraordinary and handsome." A group of young women ran out of the tea house when they heard the news. When they saw Qin Feiyang and the madman, their eyes lit up. "You have good taste." The madman touched his chin and smiled narcissistically. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at him and looked at the red-clothed woman with a smile. "May I ask if the storyteller is in the tea house right now? You are looking for the old man?" The red-clothed woman was stunned. "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded. The red-clothed woman asked suspiciously, "Then may I ask why young master is looking for the old man? Why are you talking so much nonsense? Just say it. I don't have time to talk nonsense with you." The white-eyed wolf raised his eyebrows and shouted. The red-clothed woman's pupils constricted and she hurriedly said, "Lord Wolf King, please calm down. This old man hasn't been to the tea house for a long time." The two people and the wolf looked at each other. The red-clothed woman asked, "I wonder if the three of you have heard about the old man being kidnapped last time?" "I've heard about it." Qin Feiyang nodded. "Since then, the old man has never been here again. If not for someone seeing the old man on White Crane Island not long ago, we would have thought that something had happened to him. So I'm very sorry for making the three of you come here for nothing." The red-clothed woman smiled apologetically. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment and waved his hand with a smile. "It's fine. Then do you know where he lives?" The madman thought for a moment and asked the red-clothed woman. "I don't know. Actually, I'm not very familiar with the old man. When he came to the tea house to tell stories, he was the one who asked for it. My young master found his stories quite interesting, so he asked him to come to the tea house to tell stories every day. The red-clothed woman smiled. I see. Qin Feiyang smiled and cupped his hands. Then I won't disturb you any longer. Young master, take care. The red-clothed woman bowed to send him off. Qin Feiyang, the madman, and the white-eyed wolf turned around and walked down the street aimlessly. Why did he disappear? Could it be that he also realized that he had attracted our attention? The white-eyed wolf was suspicious. No, he didn't disappear. That red-clothed woman must know his whereabouts. Qin Feiyang shook his head. What do you mean? The white-eyed wolf looked at Qin Feiyang in confusion. The madman spoke first and laughed. Because this woman revealed a flaw. A flaw. The white-eyed wolf was suspicious. Why didn't it notice it? Qin Feiyang looked at the madman and said with a smile, seeing your brother's insight is still so terrifying. Don't flatter me. The madman rolled his eyes and looked at the white-eyed wolf. If the two really have an ordinary relationship, if it were you, would you respect the other party? Furthermore, it was a look of respect on his face. Of course not. The white-eyed wolf shook his head without thinking. That's right. If it were anyone else, facing someone who has nothing to do with them, they would at most show kindness and would never show respect. But that woman just now, when she talked about the white-bearded old man, although she concealed it, it wasn't difficult to see her respect for the white-bearded old man. If it was as she said, that she wasn't familiar with the white-bearded old man, then how could there be such respect in her words when facing an ordinary storyteller? The madman sneered. I see. The white-eyed wolf nodded in realization and then asked in confusion. Then why didn't you directly expose her lie? Are you stupid? It's obvious that the white-bearded old man is related to the tea house. If we exposed her face to face, wouldn't it be the same as alerting the enemy? The madman rolled his eyes at the white-eyed wolf. That's right. It's not good for us to alert the enemy. And do you think a mere staff member has the guts to lie to us? Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. The white-eyed wolf pondered and frowned. You mean, it was the housemaster behind the tea house who made the woman say that? Who else could it be besides him? Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. Now not only the white-bearded old man, but also the entire tea house had problems. Brother Qin. Suddenly, two young men ran over. Qin Feiyang turned to look at the two young men, and was slightly surprised. Both of them were around 20 years old, wearing brocade clothes and had extraordinary temperaments. Their cultivation was not bad. Half-step imperishable realm. He had seen them before in the garden of the tea house. The two ran over breathlessly and nodded to the madman, and the white-eyed wolf. What's the matter? Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. The two calmed down and turned to look at the tea house. They whispered, Brother Qin, we're here to tell you a little secret. Qin Feiyang and the madman looked at the white-eyed wolf curiously. Actually, the people of the tea house are very familiar with the storyteller. I remember one time when we were sitting in the tea house drinking tea, we accidentally saw the woman sending a message to the white-bearded old man. Think about it. They have established a contract bridge. How can their concern be bad? The two whispered. Well, Qin Feiyang frowned and asked, is it possible that they established a contract because of work so that they can contact each other? No. I saw that they were chatting happily. And we noticed that the woman seemed to be very respectful when facing the white-bearded old man. In fact, not only us, but everyone who used to visit the tea house thought that the white-bearded old man was the elder of the owner of the tea house. So when we heard the woman say that she was not familiar with the white-bearded old man, we were very surprised. The two shook their heads. Qin Feiyang and the madman looked at the white-eyed wolf, and a light flashed in their eyes at the same time. Qin Feiyang looked at the two again and said with a smile, Then let me ask you another thing. When did the tea house appear? When did it appear? The two were stunned. When did it open for business? Qin Feiyang asked in a different way. Oh, you mean this? The two suddenly smiled and said, Let's think about it. After that, the two lowered their heads and pondered. After a while, one of the young men's eyes lit up. He looked up at Qin Feiyang and said, "It should be more than 500 years ago." "Yes, yes, yes. It was more than 500 years ago." The other young man also nodded quickly, looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "Because on the day of the opening, I came with a friend." "More than 500 years ago," Qin Feiyang murmured. At this time he was already a little famous in the Sky Cloud realm. "Brother Qin, dare I ask, why did you ask about the tea house?" The two looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. "Nothing, just curious." Qin Feiyang waved his hand and looked at the two with a smile. "Thank you for telling me, brothers. When you have time next time, I will invite you to tea at the tea house." "Really? Then we will be looking forward to it." The two were pleasantly surprised. Qin Feiyang smiled and cupped his hands. "Then we will take our leave first." "Okay." The two nodded. After walking away, Qin Feiyang turned his head and looked back. Seeing the two young men leave happily, he looked at the madman and the white-eyed wolf and said with a smile, "It seems that as we guessed, this tea house has a lot of secrets. More than 500 years ago, if I remember correctly, we were already famous in the Sky Cloud realm." The madman laughed. "Loki, Loki." Qin Feiyang waved his hand. "Tea house, Mr. Storyteller. Interesting. Let's go, let's meet this mysterious house master." Qin Feiyang's mind moved and activated the concealment art. The two men and the wolf immediately disappeared. Chapter 3591. Under the state of invisibility, the two humans and one wolf were simply unhindered. Not only did they smoothly enter the tea house, but they also successfully entered the teacups inside. The strange thing was, they didn't see the woman in red in the garden, or the tea house outside. Was it possible that she was upstairs? Hence, the two of them and the wolf entered the second floor without anyone noticing. There were many tea guests on the second floor, but they still didn't see the woman in red. What's the situation? The two of them and the wolf looked around, their faces full of suspicion. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang saw a staircase leading to the third floor. Immediately, they entered the third floor. There was no guest on the third floor. It was empty. The two of them and the wolf stood by the railing and looked around. Finally, they found a half-closed door in front of them. Hence, they walked over. Through the door, they could see that it was a study room. There was a desk and a bookshelf on the left and a coffee table and a tea set on the right. It looked very neat and clean, and there was a nice smell of incense. The two of them and the wolf looked at each other and walked in quietly. There was no one in the study room. However, Qin Feiyang noticed that the teapot on the coffee table was still bubbling and there was still half a cup of tea. The teacups were hot and it was obvious that they had just been poured. This is strange. This should be the place where the owner of the tea house rests. Why don't I see anyone? The white-eyed wolf muttered. Madman let go of Qin Feiyang and appeared from his invisible state. He walked to the front of the bookshelf and looked at it for a while. Then he smiled and said, "Astronomy, geography, poetry, ancient history, there are all kinds of books here. It seems like this floor master is really a scholar." "Don't talk about this nonsense. I just want to know where this person went." The white-eyed wolf frowned. The madman turned to look at the desk and was slightly stunned. He quickly waved to Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf. "Come here." Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf were stunned. They quickly walked over and saw the 4 treasures of the study placed on the desk. A piece of white paper was placed flat on the desk, and an inkstone was placed on top of it. On top of the inkstone, there was an exquisite writing brush. There were a few lines of words on the paper. "Brother Qin, this humble one knows that Xiao Ying's previous performance cannot escape Brother Qin's eyes. You will definitely secretly come back to investigate, so this humble one will leave first. Brother Qin, please do not investigate my origins any further. When the time is right, I will naturally appear and explain everything. Also, presently, the tea pavilion can be considered to be a famous place for scholars in Ocean of Cloud City. It would truly be a waste if it were to close down just like that. So, I'll give it to Brother Qin and leave behind the Longjing tea seedlings. I hope that Brother Qin can deal with it properly. I hope Jun and Mo Nian will see you again." Qin Feiyang and White-Eyed Wolf were dumbfounded when they saw the content. Not only did they not find the person, they even got into such trouble? Moreover, this person was quite considerate and left behind the tea seedlings of the Longjing tea seedlings for them. This person is smart. He knew that we were coming, so he immediately fled. The madman smiled bitterly. Qin Feiyang and White-Eyed Wolf also walked out of their invisible state. Qin Feiyang glanced at the desk. There was a cosmos bag beside the inkstone. Then he grabbed the cosmos bag and immersed his divine sense into it. There were over 100 saplings lying quietly inside. Every single one of them was only the height of a palm. They were snow-white and seemed to be condensed from frost. They emitted a shocking divine radiance. Were these the tea seedlings of the Longjing tea seedlings? The White-Eyed Wolf looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, "Little Qinzi, what should we do now?" The corners of Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched. He hadn't expected that he would be tricked. This housemaster was really smart. He actually knew that the woman in red's performance couldn't escape his eyes. "I'm very willing to accept these tea seedlings, but this tea pavilion..." Qin Feiyang wasn't interested in it at all. He might as well use this time to cultivate. "Then let's just leave," the White-Eyed Wolf said. The madman pondered and said, "I think we should keep the tea pavilion. Because if this housemaster wants to find us, he will definitely come to the tea pavilion first." "Keep you here to take care of it?" the White-Eyed Wolf asked. "Me?" The madman's face stiffened and he said disdainfully, "I'm a drinker. How can I be interested in taking care of a tea house? Doesn't little Qinzi like to drink tea? He's here." "Do you think I want to talk to you?" Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at the madman. He did like to drink tea, but drinking tea and taking care of a tea house were two different things. Who said that tea drinkers like to open tea houses? The madman smiled embarrassedly. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while. Then he suddenly looked at the madman and the White-Eyed Wolf and said with a smile, "I thought of someone." "Who?" The man and the wolf looked at him suspiciously. Qin Feiyang didn't answer. He directly took out the voice-transmitting stone. Buzz. Soon, a shadow appeared. It was Yueqing. "Qin Dage, Brother Mo, Brother Wolf King." Yueqing's face was full of smiles. "Are you still in the Western continent?" Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. "Yes." "What's the matter?" Yueqing nodded and asked. "There is indeed something I need your help with. Since you are in the Western continent, ask Miao Miao to come to the tea pavilion now. I'll wait for her in the study on the 3rd floor." Qin Feiyang said with a smile. "Tea pavilion?" Yueqing was stunned. After thinking for a moment, she frowned and said, "You mean the tea pavilion on the outskirts of the eastern city?" "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded. Yueqing looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously and nodded. "Okay, I'll send a message to Miao Miao." About a moment later, a woman in colorful clothes walked into the tea pavilion coldly. "Isn't this the owner of the Tianyue Tower, Yi Miao? Why did she come to the tea pavilion? She is indeed a great beauty with exceptional talent. If I can marry her, I'll wake up laughing in my sleep." With Yi Miao's arrival, the tea pavilion immediately caused a commotion. But Yi Miao turned a deaf ear to all this. She went straight into the tea pavilion, went up to the 3rd floor, found the study, and quickly walked to the door of the study. Seeing Qin Feiyang, Lin Mingya, and the White-Eyed Wolf inside, her cold expression suddenly melted. She was like a beautiful bud in full bloom, full of charm. Qin Feiyang sensed Yi Miao's aura. He turned to look at Yi Miao, who was standing at the door, and said with a smile, "Why are you standing outside? Come in quickly." Yi Miao nodded and walked in quickly. She chuckled and said, "Qin Feiyang, Brother Mo, Brother Wolf King, you showed off your invincible power on White Crane Island not long ago. Now it's spread in all the major cities. It's just a small matter." Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. He handed the letter left by the owner of the tea pavilion to Yi Miao. Yi Miao took the letter suspiciously. She lowered her head and read it. She asked in confusion, "What does this mean? Do you know the owner of this place?" "I don't know him." Qin Feiyang shook his head. "If you don't know him, why did he give you the tea pavilion?" Yi Miao suddenly felt a little confused. "Maybe it's because I'm popular." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and said, "But I'm really not interested in these things. So I asked you to come and see if you have time to help me take care of it." There's no problem with the time, but I don't know much about the way of tea. I'm afraid. Miao was a little hesitant. Who said that managing a tea house requires one to know about tea? Besides, you can ask someone who knows about tea to help manage it. In short, I'll give you the tea pavilion now. You can manage it however you want. I won't object even if it's included in the assets of Tianyua Tower. As for the Longjing tea, I think there should be a lot of it in the tea pavilion's warehouse. You can use it sparingly. When the tea saplings on my side are cultivated, I'll get someone to send it to you. Of course, you can also look for other tea leaves. After all, with your current status and financial resources, it's not difficult to find a tea comparable to the Longjing tea. With that, Qin Feiyang let the white-eyed wolf open a space-time passage. Qin Deijai, Miao hurriedly called out, but Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf didn't respond. They entered the space-time passage without looking back and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. Looking at this scene, Miao couldn't help but find it funny. She didn't expect that there was something that scared these two people and a wolf. In fact, Qin Feiyang and the others weren't scared. They just found it troublesome. Buzz. The divine voice-transmitting stone sounded. Miao took out the divine voice-transmitting stone, and Yueqing's virtual image appeared. Yueqing asked, "Have you been to the tea pavilion?" "I'm at the tea pavilion now." Miao smiled bitterly. "What about Qin Deij and the others?" Yueqing asked. "They ran away." Miao shook her head. "Ran away? What's the situation?" Yueqing was suspicious. Miao briefly explained the situation. Yueqing was stunned. She shook her head and said, "Don't blame them. After all, it's a waste of time for them to take care of the tea house. Since Qin Deij and the others have given the tea pavilion to us, then we'll do our best and take care of it well. That's the only way." Miao smiled helplessly. "Actually, for our Tianyua Tower, this is also an opportunity. I've been thinking, now that the Tianyua Tower has stabilized in the western and eastern continents, should we expand our business? I think it's a good choice," Yueqing said with a smile. Miao was slightly taken aback. She said suspiciously, "Although the Tianyua Tower has stabilized in the western and eastern continents, we haven't settled in the southern and northern continents yet, right? Although we have Qin Feiyang as our backer, and it won't be a problem to enter the southern continent now, if we act too hastily, it might arouse the suspicion of the dragons. After all, the two of us have no power or influence, and we don't have powerful strength. It's difficult for them not to suspect us," Yueqing said in a deep voice. "That's true." Miao nodded and said with a smile, "All right, I'll make the arrangements now. Then I'll have to trouble you first. In a few days I'll go back and play with you. At the same time, I'll plan the development of the tea pavilion. Since it has fallen into our hands, it naturally can't be just the Cloud Sea City." Yueqing smiled. "Okay." Miao nodded. Outside the city, above a huge mountain, Qin Feiyang, the madman, and the white-eyed wolf stood in the void, looking at the Cloud Sea City with a smile on their faces. They had finally gotten rid of this trouble. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath, looked at the madman and said, "I'll go to the Black Tortoise world first. Ask Master and the others about the coordinates of the northern continent." "Go to the northern continent later?" The madman was stunned. "Didn't the young man ask us to go take a look? Then let's go take a look. Who knows, we might have an unexpected gain." Qin Feiyang smiled and entered the Black Tortoise world to find Pei Dason and Pei Hongyu. Chapter 3592. What is this? When Qin Feiyang handed the Qianquan bag to the Pei siblings, the siblings were suspicious. "This is a tea sapling. You must cultivate it well. Not a single one can die," Qin Feiyang instructed. If it was wine, even if it was a divine brew, he wouldn't care. But tea was different. And these were the Yulu Longjing tea that was known as the king of tea. He had drunk the Yulu Longjing tea before, and the taste was no worse than the heavenly immortal dew. When the siblings heard this, they immediately said firmly, "Young master, don't worry, we will definitely complete the task." Because they also knew that Qin Feiyang loved tea. For someone who loved tea, tea saplings were treasures. For Qin Feiyang to give them such an important thing, it meant that he trusted them, so they must not mess it up. What are they talking about? Suddenly, Qin Feiyang raised his head to look at the tea garden, and discovered that Yin Zhongtian was seated with Princess Huofeng and the others, chatting and laughing as they chatted. Although less than an hour had passed outside, a long time had passed in the Black Tortoise world. Princess Huofeng and Pyrotechnic Glow were in high spirits, their bodies glowing with treasure light, as if they had been reborn. Obviously, they had successfully opened the door of potential. Who are they? The Pei siblings looked at the group of people suspiciously. Don't you know? Qin Feiyang was stunned. I don't know. During this time we have been busy outside and haven't returned to the Devil's Land. The siblings shook their heads. They are from the Feng people. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed slightly, and with a wave of his hand, the three of them appeared in the tea garden. Young Master Qin. The Daifuka brothers and Aunt Mei immediately stood up and bowed to Qin Feiyang, and their eyes were full of gratitude. Especially Aunt Mei and Aunt Lan. They never thought that the legendary first volume of the alchemy mantra would be in the hands of Qin Feiyang. They also didn't expect that the patriarch would reach such an agreement with Qin Feiyang. That was right. The Daifuka brothers had already told them about Qin Feiyang and Chief Huofeng people. Although it was just a transaction, he was still grateful to Qin Feiyang. Whether it was Daifuku, Xiaofu, Aunt Mei, or Aunt Lan, they all treated Princess Huofeng and Pyrotechnic Glow as their own children. His own child had opened the door to potential and was reborn. How could he not be happy? How could he not be grateful? Seniors, you're too polite. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and smiled politely. Seeing this, Daifuku and the other three had a better impression of Qin Feiyang. If it were other young people who had Qin Feiyang's achievements, they would definitely be arrogant and look down on others. But the kid in front of him didn't have any arrogance. Sister, you really don't want to think about this Qin Feiyang? Look how charming he is. Look at that wolf cub, he's just a piece of trash. There's no comparison at all. Pyrotechnic Glow whispered. Haven't I told you the situation? Why are you still talking nonsense? Princess Huofeng glared at Pyrotechnic Glow and snorted. Besides, is the white-eyed wolf a piece of trash? Have you ever seen a piece of trash master the supreme meaning of the 5 strongest laws? If it's a piece of trash, then you're even worse than a piece of trash. Don't you know what your cultivation is? How dare you talk about others? Pyrotechnic Glow's face froze. In this way he was really worse than a piece of trash. Pei Dason glanced at them and looked at Qin Feiyang. Young master, let's go plant tea seedlings first. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded. The brother and sister turned and walked to the side, scanning the tea garden. Seeing a small open space on the left, Pei Dason took out a small sapling and said with a smile, Hongyu, plant one there. Okay. Pei Hongyu nodded, carefully holding the tea seedling, and walked toward the open space. Seeing this, Pyrotechnic Glow looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise and said with a smile, Brother-in-law. But before he could say anything, a fierce look glared at him. Pyrotechnic Glow shrunk his neck, smiled at Princess Huofeng, and quickly changed his words. Qin Dage, I didn't expect you to like drinking tea so much. There are so many tea plants, and you want to cultivate new ones. It's too simple. Add some new varieties. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Princess Huofeng glanced at the tea seedling in Pei Hongyu's hand. At first, she didn't pay much attention to it, but suddenly, she seemed to have noticed something. She stared at the tea seedling with a hint of surprise in her eyes. The Daifuka brothers noticed Princess Huofeng's anomaly and looked at the tea seedling suspiciously. Their pupils suddenly shrank. Xiaofu said telepathically, Your Highness, this seems to be the tea seedling of the Longjing Yulu? That's right. This is the Longjing Yulu. Why does Qin Feiyang have the Longjing Yulu's tea seedling? Although the Longjing Yulu isn't a divine tea, I remember that this is a new variety developed by that person. Other than him, no one else in this world can have it. Princess Huofeng thought to herself. So, these tea seedlings were given to Qin Feiyang by that person? When did they contact each other? The Daifuka brothers were secretly surprised. I don't know. Princess Huofeng shook her head and glanced at Qin Feiyang. Her eyes flickered with an inexplicable light. Qin Feiyang was entangled by Pyrotechnic Glow and didn't notice the abnormalities of Princess Huofeng and Daifuka brothers. It was worth mentioning that Pyrotechnic Glow, Aunt May, and Aunt Lon also saw the tea seedlings, but there was nothing unusual. Obviously, only Princess Huofeng and the Daifuka brothers knew the origin of the Longjing Yulu, but the three of them didn't say anything. Qin Dage, as a younger brother, I really don't want to criticize you. You're such a young and promising person. Why do you like these things that middle-aged and old people like? Isn't drinking good? Pyrotechnic Glow chattered nonstop. Qin Feiyang felt a headache. Why did he meet such a chatterbox? Moreover, tea should be for middle-aged and old people? What's wrong with young people drinking tea? Is it against the law? Qin Feiyang coughed dryly, looked at Princess Huofeng, and said with a smile, the door of your potential has been opened. Can you? What? You don't like us? You're asking us to leave? Princess Huofeng looked at Qin Feiyang with dissatisfaction. I'm thinking for your sake. After all, we're destined to be enemies in the future. It's not good to mix too much personal feelings now. Qin Feiyang smiled embarrassedly. Now is now. The future is the future. Besides, before we left, Father didn't say that we must go back. Princess Huofeng said lightly. Then what do you mean? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Princess Huofeng glanced around and said lightly, I think it's quite comfortable here. The environment is good. The most important thing is that it's quiet. I plan to stay here for a while. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Daifuku, Pyrotechnic Glow, and the other two also looked at Princess Huofeng in shock. This didn't seem like something the eldest princess would say. Princess Huofeng looked at Pyrotechnic Glow and the other two and said with a smile, Zihui, Aunt May, Aunt Lon, you can go back first. If you don't go back, why should I go back? Pyrotechnic Glow quickly waved his hand, looking unhappy. No, wait. Qin Feiyang quickly interrupted the conversation between the two and looked at Princess Huofeng angrily. What's so good about my place? Let's not talk about anything else. Let's just talk about the time array. The dragons have the time array of 5,000 years in a day. You Feng people must have it too. Why do you insist on staying here? What do you mean by insist? I'm the eldest princess of the Fire Phoenix clan. Shouldn't you feel honored to stay here? Let's talk about it later. The Fire Phoenix Divine Jade and Fire Phoenix Sword are still with me. Princess Huofeng looked at Qin Feiyang proudly. Don't forget that these two sovereign divine weapons belong to me temporarily. Qin Feiyang's face darkened. What kind of logic was this? So what if she was the eldest princess? It seemed that only the white-eyed wolf could deal with this woman. Yes. The right to use them does belong to you. But the final control is still in my hands. Princess Huofeng smiled proudly. A row of black lines appeared on Qin Feiyang's forehead. He wanted to slap himself in the face. How could he be so stupid to reason with a woman? Can a woman be reasoned with? Fine. I admit defeat. You want to follow me? Up to you. But if you want to stay in the Black Tortoise world, don't even think about it. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and forcefully swept up a group of people and appeared above the mountain peak outside. Are you preparing to return to the phoenix nest? The white-eyed wolf saw the group of people appear and looked at Princess Huofeng. He waved his hand and smiled. I won't send you off. Take care. Princess Huofeng's expression froze. This damn wolf cub, why did he seem more and more annoying? Qin Feiyang turned to Yin Zhongtian at the side and transmitted his voice over to him. Old Yin, you had better go to Sky Cloud Island. You've seen senior brother Feng Zi's growth with your own eyes, and this is a great opportunity for you. Bring some wine with you to Big Brother as well. Okay. Yin Zhongtian nodded. Indeed. Feng Er's growth over the years was too frightening. He didn't even dare to dream about it. So, why wouldn't he go with such a good opportunity? He would be a fool not to go. Yin Zhongtian took out the sword of Thanatos and looked at it pleadingly. You must protect Brother Qin. Clang. The sword of Thanatos trembled in the void as a response. Then it disappeared into Qin Feiyang's body. White-eyed wolf, bring the wine. Qin Feiyang reached out to the white-eyed wolf. The white-eyed wolf jumped up and said angrily, Are you crazy? Can't you go find Jiaoxi yourself? There's ready-made wine. Why would I go there? Qin Feiyang bared his teeth. How did I end up with such a bastard like you? The white-eyed wolf was furious. With a wave of his paw, 2,000 jugs of peerless divine wine appeared. Looking at these jugs, Pyrotechnic Glow's eyes lit up. Qin Feiyang looked at Yun Zhongtian and smiled. Go. Yun Zhongtian nodded. Looking at Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf, he reminded them, be careful. Fenger waved his hand. We don't need you to worry about us. Work hard and don't let down old Qin's good intentions. That's right. We'll wait for your strong return. The white-eyed wolf waved his paw and a space-time portal appeared. We'll meet again. Yun Zhongtian waved his hand and brought the 2,000 jugs of peerless divine wine into the portal without looking back. The white-eyed wolf chuckled. Looks like there's no need to control this old man anymore. He's already on our side. Although I haven't interacted much with him, I can tell that he's a good person. Fenger nodded. Chapter 3593. Where are you taking Yun Zhongtian to? Princess Huafeng asked as she looked suspiciously at Qin Feiyang and the madman. But as the eldest princess of the Fire Phoenix clan, she knew her limits and did not ask any further. She then turned her head to look at Pyrotechnic Glow and Auntie May and said, the two of you should go back as well. What's the rush? Pyrotechnic Glow waved his hand and went over to the white-eyed wolf's side and said with a chuckle, Wolf cub, what kind of wine is that? It looks rather tasty. Looking at the scene before her, Princess Huafeng's heart was filled with anger. The white-eyed wolf looked askance at Pyrotechnic Glow, and it was a long while before he spat out. None of your business. You. Pyrotechnic Glow glared at the white-eyed wolf. The white-eyed wolf ignored him completely and turned his head to look at Qin Feiyang to ask. Listening to a certain woman's words, it seems that you still want to shamelessly follow us? Princess Huafeng's face darkened and she said angrily, Hey, I'm still right here. Don't treat me like air. You're still here? The white-eyed wolf was taken aback and he quickly turned to look at Princess Huafeng and smiled sheepishly. My apologies. Big brother thought you had already left. But why are you still here? The door to your potential has already been opened, right? We don't have anything else that can move your heart now. What are you still hanging around here for? Princess Huafeng's hands were clenched tightly and her veins were popping. This damned wolf cub is asking for a beating. Qin Feiyang was laughing happily in his heart. A wicked person would be dealt with by another wicked person. Only the white-eyed wolf would be able to take care of this woman. You wouldn't have taken a fancy to Big Brother's peerless looks, would you? Please don't. Big Brother has no interest in a woman without hair. The white-eyed wolf said with a shameless chuckle. Scoundrel. Princess Huafeng couldn't take it anymore and slapped the white-eyed wolf. The white-eyed wolf raised his paw and easily blocked Princess Huafeng's arm. He frowned and said, Are you trying to attract my attention? No. I'm really not interested in you. I purposely attracted your attention? Princess Huafeng was stunned. Then she became furious and roared. Who do you think you are? Do I need to deliberately attract your attention? She was about to explode from anger. How could there be such a shameless wolf cub in this world? The Daifuka brothers and Aunt May were also speechless. He had finally witnessed what it meant to be shameless. It was simply invincible. Pyrotechnic Glow glanced at Princess Huafeng and then at White-Eyed Wolf. He couldn't help but grumble in his heart. His sister was usually a very calm person. Why was she so easily angered now? Abnormal, too abnormal. No. He couldn't let his sister stay alone. It was too dangerous. Pyrotechnic Glow looked at Aunt May and Lan Ruoxin and smiled. Aunt May, Aunt Lan, you two go back first. Tell father that I'll be playing outside for a while. What? Aunt May and Lan Ruoxin looked at Pyrotechnic Glow in shock. It's a happy decision, Pyrotechnic Glow said as he pushed the two of them. I want you two to go back so that you can help pay attention to Bing Rinning's movements. I know this woman's character too well. After suffering such a big loss this time, she definitely won't let it go. Qin Feiyang heard this and looked at Pyrotechnic Glow in surprise. He didn't expect this person to be so smart. Okay. Then be careful. Aunt May and Lan Ruoxin smiled helplessly. Pyrotechnic Glow smiled proudly. Don't worry. With the flaming phoenix blade and the divine phoenix spear protecting me, who dares to do anything to me? The two of them shook their heads and smiled bitterly. They looked at Qin Feiyang and Lunatic and apologized. We're sorry for causing trouble for you two brothers. But I hope you two brothers can help me take care of the two princes. Who needs their care? Princess Huofeng snorted. Aunt May looked at the first princess and sighed. Your Highness, you can't say that. After all, you and your brother have just come out. But they are different. They have been wandering outside for a long time, and know how sinister people can be. Also, you have good taste. White-Eyed Wolf looked at Aunt May and grinned. Aunt May smiled at White-Eyed Wolf and looked at the first princess and Pyrotechnic Glow. Anyway, try to listen to them. Don't be willful. I know. Princess Huofeng waved her hand. You still think we are long-winded? Aunt May and Lunatic shook their heads helplessly and turned to Daifuku. Daifuku opened a space-time tunnel, and the two of them walked in without looking back. How troublesome. White-Eyed Wolf glanced at the siblings, shook his head and sighed. Princess Huofeng glared at him fiercely. It will be very lively along the way. Qin Feiyang also shook his head and sighed. He turned to Lunatic and asked, Do you have the coordinates of the northern continent? Yes. Lunatic nodded. Qin Feiyang said, Then let's change our appearances and set off. Why are we going to the northern continent? Pyrotechnic Glow looked at the two of them and the wolf suspiciously. White-Eyed Wolf raised his eyebrows and looked at Pyrotechnic Glow. Since you are following us, you should know a rule. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. If you don't speak, don't speak. What are you so arrogant for? Pyrotechnic Glow glared at White-Eyed Wolf. Not happy? Then scram. I'm not stopping you. White-Eyed Wolf said and turned into a big fat black cat. Waha. You're too funny. Pyrotechnic Glow was stunned and couldn't help but laugh. Idiot. White-Eyed Wolf glanced at him. Just these two words made Pyrotechnic Glow angry again. Qin Feiyang and Lunatic also turned into two ordinary-looking young men. Is it necessary? With your current strength, who dares to provoke you? Princess Huofeng didn't understand. If you want to be surrounded like a monkey, you can come with us like this. White-Eyed Wolf waved his paw and opened a space-time passage. He then jumped up and landed on Qin Feiyang's shoulder. Qin Feiyang and Lunatic looked at each other and smiled, then stepped into the space-time passage. Bastard! Princess Huofeng stomped her feet and changed her appearance slightly before following them into the passage. Their consideration is actually very thorough. After all, such a big thing happened on White Crane Island. The people of the Sky Cloud realm already know us. If we appear in front of them like this, it will definitely cause a commotion. Daifuku and Lunatic smiled in appreciation. Compared to Qin Feiyang and the others who had rich experience, the two princesses were still lacking. Northern continent. Mountains rose and fell, majestic and magnificent. A city called Fengyuan City was located in the center of the northern continent. It was like a king looking down on all directions. According to Master, Fengyuan City is the largest city in the northern continent. If we want to ask for information, it is the best place to come. In front of the city gate, there was a wide road. People came and went in a hurry. Qin Feiyang, Lunatic, and White-Eyed Wolf walked in front. Princess Huofeng and the other four followed behind unhurriedly. As Lunatic walked towards Fengyuan City, he introduced it to Qin Feiyang in a low voice. Qin Feiyang asked curiously, How far is Fengyuan City from Sky Palace? The time is too short, so I didn't ask. But as long as we enter Fengyuan City, it is naturally not difficult to ask about Sky Palace. But why are you interested in Sky Palace? Lunatic looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Sky Palace is the ruler of the northern continent. Since we came to the northern continent, we naturally have to ask about Sky Palace. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. So that's how it is. Lunatic nodded in realization. Suddenly he frowned and said, Say, that guy asked us to come to the northern continent. Is it related to Sky Palace? I don't know. Qin Feiyang shook his head. That guy is too much. If he has something to say, just say it. Why must we find the answer ourselves? Does he really think that we are like him, and have nothing to do every day? White-Eyed Wolf said angrily. What's the use of complaining here? Lunatic rolled his eyes at him. Actually, it was also a headache. because they did not know the young man's intentions. If it was someone else, it would be fine. They could analyze it step by step. But this young man was as unfathomable as the ocean. They could not guess what he was thinking. Soon, the group smoothly entered Fengyuan City. There were guards at the city gate, but they did not check them one by one. After all, compared to the Western continent, Eastern continent, and Southern continent, the Northern continent was the most peaceful place. Inside the city, there was an endless stream of people and carriages. Princess Huafeng and Pyrotechnic Glow were entering a human city for the first time. Everything was new to them. Qin Feiyang and the others did not pay attention to it. They listened and observed their surroundings. Now, what they heard the most was the battle on White Crane Island. I didn't expect it to spread so quickly. Lunatic shook his head. The thing that this world does not lack the most is gossip. White-eyed Wolf pursed his lips. Fortunately, he had the foresight to change his appearance. Otherwise, he would definitely cause a huge uproar the moment he stepped into Fengyuan City. Brother, look. The ornaments inside are so beautiful. And the clothes over there are so beautiful. Come with me to take a look. Princess Huafeng was like a little girl at this moment. She looked at the dazzling array of shops on both sides of the street. Her eyes were shining. The Daifuka brothers looked helpless. They looked at Qin Feiyang, Lunatic, and White-eyed Wolf and smiled apologetically. I'm sorry, our phoenix nest does not have these things. So no matter what you see, your highnesses will find it fresh. You don't even have these? Your phoenix nest is too boring. Lunatic said. This place is different. The ones living in the phoenix nest are all divine phoenixes. Not to mention strolling around. Even playing around is a waste of time for everyone. Daifuku sighed. So you only know how to cultivate? Lunatic asked. The two nodded. That's so boring. No matter what you do, you have to strike a balance between work and rest. Lunatic had a look of disdain. This can only mean that everyone's lifestyle is different. Daifuku smiled. Lunatic heard this and turned to look at Princess Huafeng and Lunatic, who ran into the shop. He could not help but have a trace of sympathy on his face. Then he looked at White-eyed Wolf and laughed. Brother Wolf, actually this woman is not bad. Do you want to consider her? Of course. These words were said through voice transmission. After all, the Daifuka brothers were at the side. White-eyed Wolf smiled in disdain and said indifferently, if you like her, then go. Don't blindly matchmake her. If I wasn't already taken, would you have a chance? Lunatic sneered. It's okay. I believe that little fairy won't object to you finding a concubine. White-eyed Wolf bared his teeth. Lunatic's face turned black. I am talking to you about serious matters and you are talking nonsense with me. Chapter 3594. Madman pointed at the White-eyed Wolf, looked at Qin Feiyang and said angrily, Do you see that? Do you see that? This child is unteachable. Qin Feiyang patted Madman's shoulder and comforted him. Although I also have the same intention, you can't force things. Look on the bright side. That's right. The emperor is not in a hurry, but the eunuch is. The White-eyed Wolf dug his nose. I became a eunuch? Madman was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. Scram. Suddenly, a shout sounded. Two black-clothed youths hurriedly walked over and pushed away Qin Feiyang and the others. They then walked towards the accessory store without looking back. Qin Feiyang and the others were stunned. What's going on? When they came back to their senses, the two had already entered the accessory store. Who is so arrogant? Madman frowned. Qin Feiyang, the White-eyed Wolf, and the Daifuka brothers also looked suspiciously at the accessory store. Do you see the word heaven on their chests? That's the symbol of the heavenly palace. They are both disciples of the heavenly palace. The surrounding pedestrians also came over and whispered. Qin Feiyang and Madman looked at each other. No wonder they were so arrogant. It turned out that they were disciples of the heavenly palace. As the ruler of the northern continent, the disciples of the heavenly palace naturally had unparalleled status and power. No matter who it was, they had to be respectful when they saw them. Not good. They are going to the accessory store of the two highnesses. The Daifuku brothers' faces suddenly changed as they quickly ran towards the accessory store. Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf looked at each other and immediately followed. Accessory store. All the items sold here were handmade items. The store was not very big, but it was full of dazzling items. Princess Huofeng was holding a jade pendant and carefully examining it. Pyrotechnic Glow was also curiously looking at the small items placed on the counter. Other than the siblings, there were more than a dozen young men and women. Most of them were couples. The owner of the shop was an old man. He was dressed in plain clothes, had white hair and was hunched over. However, he seemed to be in good spirits. He had a polite smile on his face as he kept introducing various items to the customers in the shop. It could be said that the atmosphere in the shop was quite harmonious. However, with the arrival of the two Heavenly Hall's disciples, the customers in the store immediately fell into a panic. One by one, they put down the items in their hands and retreated to the side. Their faces were filled with fear as they looked at the black-clothed young man and the black-clothed young man. The shop owner's expression changed slightly when he saw the two young men. He hurriedly ran in front of them with a flattering smile on his old face. Princess Huofeng raised her head and looked at the two of them. A hint of suspicion flashed across her eyes. Then she lowered her head and looked at the jade pendant in her hand. She did not recognize the symbol of the Heavenly Palace at all. Moreover, even if they knew each other, they would not care about two mere Sky Palace's disciples. Old man, have you prepared the things we want? The two young men looked at the old man with their noses in the air, looking overbearing. Not yet. The old man stammered, his face filled with fear. What? Not yet? Do you take our words for granted? We said last time that we'll only give you 3 months. Old man, we've already given you enough face by giving you 3 months to prepare. So don't be so shameless. The two of them immediately roared with hostility when they heard the old man's words. I know. But as you can see, I only have this small shop. Asking me to gather 10 million soul stones in 3 months is really difficult for me. Why don't you give me a few more months? The old man looked at the two of them pleadingly. What? You want us to give you a few more months? The two of them were furious when they heard that. They said in a gloomy voice, Let me tell you, you have to give us the 10 million soul stones today. Otherwise, don't blame us for being rude and destroying your lousy shop. Qin Feiyang and the others entered the accessory store. They walked to Princess Huofeng and Pyrotechnic Glow and asked suspiciously, What's going on? It seems like they're here to collect their debts. Pyrotechnic Glow shook his head. Of course, this kind of thing couldn't arouse his interest. Besides, it was only right and proper to repay debts. Hearing the two young men's words, the old man's expression changed. He quickly waved his hand and said, You can't destroy it. You can't destroy it. I've already gathered more than 1 million soul stones. Why don't I give it to you first? You only managed to gather more than 1 million soul stones in 3 months? Then how long do we have to wait for the 10 million? The two of them were full of hostility. Sorry. It's all because I'm useless. Please give me a little more time. The old man was already kneeling on the ground and begging. Princess Huofeng put down the jade pendant in her hand. She glanced at the pitiful old man, then at the two arrogant young men. She smiled faintly and said, Old man, how much is this jade pendant? The old man looked at Princess Huofeng and said apologetically, Miss, I'm sorry. Our shop only accepts soul stones. If you're willing, give me 100 soul stones. Normally, transactions were done with divine crystals. Using soul stones here seemed like the old man had no choice but to pay his debts. Okay. Princess Huofeng nodded and looked at Daifuku beside her. She smiled and said, Give him 10 million soul stones. Ah. As soon as these words came out, everyone was stunned. Including the two young men. Didn't the shop owner say that he only wanted 100 soul stones? Why did he give 10 million? Qin Feiyang and Madman also looked at each other. When they came back to their senses, they laughed inwardly. This woman is quite kind. Princess Huofeng was clearly helping the old man by doing this. 10 million soul stones was naturally nothing to the eldest princess of the Fire Phoenix clan, but what was precious was her kindness. Miss, you can't. The old man came back to his senses and hurriedly looked at Princess Huofeng. He said, "Thank you for your kindness, miss, but I can't accept these soul stones because I don't deserve them." "Old man, are you stupid? Someone gave you soul stones and you didn't want them. Why are you pretending to be virtuous?" The two young men sneered. The old man said angrily, "I'm not pretending to be virtuous. I'm earning money with my conscience." "Can your conscience feed you?" The two young men smiled disdainfully and looked at Princess Huofeng. They stretched out their hands and said, "He owes us 10 million. Just give it to us." Princess Huofeng glanced at the two, and then looked at Daifuku. "Give it to them." "Yes." Daifuku nodded and was about to take out the soul stones from his interspatial ring. But at this moment, the white-eyed wolf jumped down from Qin Feiyang's shoulder and stopped Daifuku. Daifuku looked at the white-eyed wolf suspiciously. The white-eyed wolf didn't explain. It looked at the two young men, and then at the old man. Originally, it didn't intend to pay attention to them. But when it heard the old man say that he was earning money with his conscience, it couldn't help but feel a little confused. Because not everyone could say something like that. So its intuition told it that there was something wrong with this matter. The white-eyed wolf looked at the two young men and asked, "How did he owe you 10 million soul stones?" "Are you asking us?" The two young men were stunned. "Otherwise?" The white-eyed wolf picked its nose and said, "Who are you? How dare you question us? Do you know what this is?" The two young men pointed at the word heaven on their chests and shouted, "Yes, it's the symbol of the heavenly palace." The white-eyed wolf nodded. "Then how dare you meddle in our business? If you don't want to die, scram." The two young men's eyes flashed with killing intent. The white-eyed wolf raised its eyebrows. How dare they ask it to scram? They must be tired of living. "Actually, I'm quite curious too. He's just an ordinary old man. How did he owe you 10 million soul stones?" Qin Feiyang stood out and asked with a smile. "There are so many nosy people nowadays. Okay, I'll tell you. 3 months ago, his grandson injured us, so he has to compensate us. His grandson can't be found now, so of course we have to ask him for it." The two young men sneered. Hearing this, the old man clenched his fists as if he had something to complain about, but he didn't dare to say it. "I see." Qin Feiyang suddenly understood. After thinking for a while, he asked in confusion, "But you're disciples of the heavenly palace, and your cultivation is quite good. Both of you are half-step imperishable realm. Is his grandson stronger than you?" His grandson is also a disciple of the heavenly palace. Of course he's no match for us with real swords and spears, but his grandson is scheming behind our backs." The two young men snorted. Qin Feiyang nodded in realization and said with a smile, "Then we do have to compensate." "It's not like that." The old man seemed to be unable to suppress the anger in his heart and roared with a hoarse voice. Qin Feiyang looked at the old man suspiciously. The old man wanted to say something but stopped, looking at the two young men with fear. Princess Huofeng frowned and said to the old man, "Old man, if you're really wronged, you can say it out and let everyone judge." "That's right. Justice is in people's hearts. As long as what you say is true, I believe there will be people who will help you get an explanation." Pyrotechnic Glow also nodded. The old man looked at the siblings and pointed at the two young men. He gritted his teeth and said, "They're all slandering me. My grandson never attacked them. They were the ones who attacked my grandson, and my grandson seriously injured one of them." Qin Feiyang and the others looked at each other. There really was an injustice. "Old man, what nonsense are you talking about?" The two young men were furious and glared at the old man. "I'm not talking nonsense." The old man angrily roared. Looking at Qin Feiyang and the crowd surrounding the entrance, he painfully said, 3 months ago, my grandson was training outside and inadvertently found a treasure chest. It was originally a very happy thing, but in the end, he was discovered by them and they joined forces to sneak attack my grandson." From the old man's explanation, Qin Feiyang and the others finally understood that it was these two people who were tempted by the wealth and sneak attacked the old man's grandson. However, the old man's grandson was very vigilant, and was also a half-step undead realm cultivator. Therefore, even though he was heavily injured, he was still lucky enough to escape. But the two young men were worried that the old man's grandson would take revenge on them, so they chased the old man's grandson and killed him. After that, the two young men didn't feel guilty. Instead, they joined forces and came to blackmail the old man. The old man was alone and didn't have a good cultivation. Plus, the two young men threatened him, so he had to give in. Also, the old man went to the Sky Palace and asked the higher-ups for help. But it was useless. The two young men insisted that the old man's grandson attacked them first, so they had to kill him. Because there was no third person at the scene, no one could prove it. So the higher-ups of the Sky Palace ignored the old man's request. And because there was no evidence, the two young men became more and more arrogant in their blackmail. Chapter 3595. But to this, the two young men didn't admit it. They stared at the old man and shouted, "You're talking nonsense. You're slandering us." "I didn't. Everyone, you must believe me." The old man looked at Qin Feiyang and the others for help. Qin Feiyang frowned. Now that both sides had their own story and there was no solid evidence, they couldn't make a choice. Princess Fire Phoenix asked suspiciously, "Old man, since your grandson was killed at that time, how do you know about it in such detail?" "Because before my grandson died, he sent me a message saying that he was being chased and might not be able to come back alive. I asked him then. He told me the whole situation. I thought he could escape, but I didn't expect." Speaking of this, the old man closed his eyes in pain. After a long silence, he opened his eyes and continued, "Not long after, I checked the Divine Voice Stone and found that my grandson's contract bridge had disappeared. May I ask everyone, if my grandson wasn't killed by them, who killed him?" When he said the last sentence, the old man couldn't help but roar hysterically. "How dare you slander a disciple of the Heavenly Palace? You're courting death." Hearing this, the two young men's eyes were filled with killing intent, and they slapped at the old man. Whoosh! But at this moment, the white-eyed wolf stepped forward and blocked in front of the old man. It slapped at the two young men with its paw. The two young men were knocked back and blood dripped from the corner of their mouths. "No way! A big fat cat is so strong?" The crowd outside the door was stunned. "Bastard! How dare you attack a disciple of the Heavenly Palace? You're courting death." The two young men stared at the white-eyed wolf with killing intent. The white-eyed wolf ignored them and looked at Qin Feiyang. It bared its teeth and said, "This is easy to solve. Just read their memories." Qin Feiyang smiled and formed a seal with both hands. Two puppet seals appeared in an instant and sank into the top of the heads of the two young men. The two young men were only at the half-step undead realm. It was too easy to control them. Soon, Qin Feiyang was able to read the crucial memories. "How is it?" White-eyed wolf asked. Qin Feiyang nodded and said, "It's exactly as you said." Hearing this, before the white-eyed wolf could say anything, Princess Huofeng was the first to fly into a rage. She shouted, "Bastards, not only did you kill someone's grandson, you even made up a rumor to blackmail someone's elderly. You guys are worse than animals. Impudent. Who do you think you are? Even if that is the case, do you dare to attack us? You better know your place. The Heavenly Hall is not something you can offend." The two of them flew into a rage out of humiliation and roared, "What's so great about being a Heavenly Palace disciple?" Suddenly, a strange voice sounded from the crowd outside. Whoosh! Following closely, a black figure appeared in the shop. This person was dressed in black and had a black skull mask on his face. He was about 1.8 meters tall and had a slender body. His entire body was emitting a gloomy and evil aura. "It's him. Masked Azura." Seeing this person appear, everyone was shocked. Even the two arrogant disciples of the Heavenly Hall had fear on their faces. "The disciples of the Heavenly Hall are really disgusting," the masked Azura said gloomily. He raised his hand and a wisp of the power of law appeared. Like two sharp arrows, it directly penetrated the two young men's eyebrows. "Ah!" Accompanied by a scream, their divine souls and heads were shattered on the spot. After killing the two of them, the masked Azura turned around and left without looking back. As for Qin Feiyang and the others, the masked Azura did not even look at them from the beginning to the end. "What's going on?" Qin Feiyang and the others came back to their senses and looked at each other. This person was too fierce. He was even more powerful than them, and killed the 2 disciples of the Heavenly Hall on the spot. The old man came back to his senses and hurriedly ran to the door. Looking at the Masque de Jura's back, he shouted, "Thank you, Masque de Jura. You are a good person." However, the Masque de Jura did not pay attention to him and disappeared. "Grandson, your revenge has been avenged. You can rest in peace." The old man closed his eyes and muttered with his hands clenched. When he opened his eyes, he turned around and ran to Qin Feiyang and the others. He knelt and said, "Thank you for speaking up for justice. This old man is really unable to repay you." "Old man, please get up. It's nothing. Don't be so polite." Qin Feiyang went forward to help the old man up and comforted him. "I can understand your feelings, but the dead cannot be brought back to life. You must restrain your grief. Moreover, I also believe that your grandson will not want to see you so sad in the underworld." "Yes." The old man nodded and wiped the tears from the corner of his eyes. He looked up at Qin Feiyang and smiled. "You are also a good person." Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. The madman glanced at the old man and sent a voice transmission. "Old Qin, did you notice the power of law of the Masque de Jura?" "Yes." Qin Feiyang replied secretly. "That's the law of time. Although I didn't see through his cultivation, he has the law of time and has such courage. It can be seen that he is not an ordinary person." The madman sent a voice transmission. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed as he looked at the old man and asked, "Old man, who is this Masque de Jura? He seems to be very powerful." "Of course he is. However, no one in the northern continent knows who he is." The old man shook his head. "No one knows?" Qin Feiyang and the others were taken aback as they glanced at the people outside the door. "Indeed, no one knows. That's because he always wears a skull mask. No one has ever seen his true appearance. Moreover, his whereabouts are hard to track. Most importantly, he specializes in killing the disciples of the Sky Hall, especially the disciples of the Sky Hall who bully men and women. Once they encounter him, they will definitely die. So over time we call him the Masque de Jura." The people outside the door began to chatter. "Specializes in killing Heavenly Hall's disciples?" Qin Feiyang and the madman looked at the white-eyed wolf. They thought it was just a coincidence, but they didn't expect there to be so many stories. The old man smiled and said, "Although in the eyes of Heavenly Hall, the Masque de Jura is a heinous person, in the eyes of us ordinary people he is a good person." "A good person," Qin Feiyang murmured. Suddenly, he had a strong interest in this Masque de Jura. "Masque de Jura, you actually dare to come to Fengyuan City to commit murder. Die." Suddenly, a murderous roar rang out. Boom. In the next moment, a powerful aura exploded in the sky. Perfect dominator realm. Qin Feiyang and the others looked at each other and immediately walked out. The crowd at the door also turned around and ran to the street, looking up. When Qin Feiyang and the others entered the street and looked up, they saw a black-haired man rushing over aggressively. His cultivation had reached the perfect dominator realm. He is the guard commander of the City Lord Mansion. He must have received the news and came to kill the Masque de Jura. The old man also followed out and said with a worried expression, "Guard commander." Qin Feiyang frowned and said, "This matter was originally the fault of those 2 Heavenly Hall disciples. Logically speaking, they shouldn't have attacked the Masque de Jura, right?" The old man's expression changed and he hurriedly said, "Little brother, you can't say such things casually." Qin Feiyang looked at the old man suspiciously. Although the Masque de Jura has been doing good deeds, in the eyes of Heavenly Hall, his cultivation is challenging the authority of Heavenly Hall. Heavenly Hall will definitely not tolerate this kind of thing. Therefore, if the people of Heavenly Hall hear you, they will definitely vent their anger on you. The old man sighed. "But isn't this person from the City Lord Mansion?" White-eyed Wolf asked. "The City Lord Mansion belongs to Heavenly Hall." After the old man finished speaking, he was slightly stunned and looked suspiciously at Qin Feiyang and the others. He said, "This is something that everyone knows. Don't you know? We are not from the northern continent." Qin Feiyang smiled. "I see." The old man suddenly understood. Whoosh. It was also at this moment. The masked Azura rushed into the sky from the city and looked at the guard commander with a pair of black eyes that were filled with coldness and disgust. Don't even think about escaping this time. Surround him. Following the guard commander's shout, figures from the city below rose into the sky from all directions. They were all guards of the city lord mansion, and the weakest among them was at the half-step sovereign realm. The masked Azura glanced at the guards, and then looked at the city below. He then turned around and rushed out of the city. Don't even think about it. 2 guards charged at him from the front. You're courting death. The masked Azura snorted coldly. Following a clang, a 3-foot-long sword appeared. This long sword was blood-red as if it was dyed in blood. It emitted a monstrous murderous aura. As the masked Azura slashed with his sword, a blood-red sword chi surged out like a tide. The 2 guards screamed on the spot as their blood splattered across the sky. That's a supreme-grade heaven-defying divine artifact. Lunatic muttered. This person was truly merciless when dealing with people from the Sky Palace. After carving out a path of blood, the masked Azura rushed out of the city without looking back and entered the mountains outside the city. Chase. If he's dead, I want to see his corpse. If he's alive, I want to see him. The guard commander shouted. A group of people chased into the mountains. Let's go take a look, Qin Feiyang said. Lunatic nodded. Don't go. The old man hurriedly stopped Qin Feiyang. What? Qin Feiyang didn't understand. The old man said, if you go now, the people from the city lord mansion will definitely think that you are the masked Azura's accomplices. At that time they won't let you go. Qin Feiyang and Lunatic looked at each other and smiled. Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and smiled. Thank you for your concern. We'll meet again. After saying that, the group soared into the sky and disappeared outside the city. Wait. I haven't paid for this jade pendant yet. Princess Huifeng suddenly patted her head and said while looking at the jade pendant in her hand. Do you think that if you give him the soul stone now he will still want it? Madman chuckled. Princess Huifeng was stunned and couldn't help but smile. The human world was really interesting. Then, she wore the jade pendant on her white neck. Although it was just an ordinary jade pendant, it added a bit of charm on her neck. There are still good people in this world. Thank you. At the same time, the old man stood in the crowd, looking at the direction where Qin Feiyang and the others disappeared and muttered to himself. Chapter 3596. Outside the city, deep in the mountains, Qin Feiyang's group was moving as fast as lightning. When they arrived above a valley, they immediately stopped and looked at the valley below with shock. There were dozens of corpses lying in the valley below. The heads of the corpses were smashed and blood stained the ground. Although they didn't have heads, from their attire and figure, it was clear that they were a group of guard commanders. What's going on? Madmen looked at this scene in shock. Were they killed by the masked Azura? But this speed was too fast. When he came back to his senses, Madman immediately released his divine sense and spread it in all directions. But within the range of his divine sense, apart from many fierce beasts in the distance, there was no trace of the masked Azura. This is impossible. Madman muttered with a face full of disbelief. What's impossible? The white-eyed wolf looked at him suspiciously. Madman said, based on our current speed, even if he's a sovereign at the perfection realm, it's impossible for him to escape from under our noses so quickly. There is indeed a problem. This guard and his group of people were all killed in an instant. The guards are perfect rulers and must have many methods, but they were instantly killed. It seems that this person's strength is beyond our imagination. Could this be the reason why the youth had us come to the northern continent? Qin Feiyang frowned. The white-eyed wolf was slightly stunned and asked, you mean that the youth wanted us to investigate the masked Azura's true identity? No. With the youth's strength and methods, if he really knows of the masked Azura's existence, then he must have seen his true face. Qin Feiyang shook his head. That's true. No matter how strong this masked Azura is, he can't escape the youth's investigation. The white-eyed wolf nodded. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment and waved his hand. This is just my guess. The youth's goal in bringing us to the northern continent isn't the masked Azura. This bastard, What does he want us to do in the northern continent? The white-eyed wolf was incomparably angry. He had no clue at all. Madman suddenly asked, could it be the Sky Palace? Sky Hall? Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf were stunned. Yes. In the entire northern continent, only the Heavenly Palace can pique the interest of this young man. Madman said. This Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf fell silent. Although what the madman said made sense, there was no way to confirm it. Princess Huofeng looked at the two people and the wolf who were at a loss. She couldn't help but ask, who exactly is this young man you're talking about? You can't remember? Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. The white-eyed wolf glared at her angrily. Princess Huofeng was instantly enraged. She was just asking out of curiosity. Was there a need to be so fierce? Your Highness, calm down, calm down. We are civilized people. Don't bother with it. When the Daifuka brothers saw this, they hurriedly comforted him. Wait a moment. I wonder if you guys have noticed a problem? Suddenly, Pyrotechnic Glow spoke from the side. What problem? Everyone couldn't help but look at Pyrotechnic Glow. Since this masked Dajura has the ability to instantly kill a group of guards, why didn't he just do it in Fengyuan City? You want to lure the guard commander and his men here? Pyrotechnic Glow asked. Yes. There's no need for him to do that. Because he can instantly kill these people, there's no need to worry about harming the innocent citizens of Fengyuan City. The white-eyed wolf slapped his head and exclaimed, is it because he's trying to hide something? Hide something? Qin Feiyang and the others looked at each other. Yes, he's definitely trying to hide something. But what exactly is he trying to hide? The white-eyed wolf frowned. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment and looked at the white-eyed wolf and Pyrotechnic Glow. If it's really as you said, then he should be hiding his killing method, such as a powerful law profound. In other words, he's afraid of others seeing his killing method. If others see it, they might be able to guess his identity. Madman asked. Yes, that must be the case. The white-eyed wolf nodded with certainty and analyzed. Brother guesses that this masked Dajura must be very famous in the northern continent. He's afraid that others will see through his identity, so he doesn't dare to act recklessly in front of others. It's just a guess. You make it sound like it's true. Princess Huofeng pursed her lips. The white-eyed wolf raised his eyebrows. Just as the two were about to quarrel again, an angry voice suddenly sounded from behind them. You actually killed the guard commander. You really are in cahoots with the masked Dajura. Qin Feiyang and the others hurriedly turned around and saw a guard standing in the void not far away, looking at them in horror. This misunderstanding is a bit big, Pyrotechnic Glow muttered, a murderous intent flashing in his eyes. It was obvious that this guard had just arrived. Seeing the guard commander and the others die in the valley, he naturally thought that it was the work of Qin Feiyang and the others. Whoosh. But before Pyrotechnic Glow could do anything, the guard turned around and fled toward Fengyuan City without looking back. Daifuku, kill him. Pyrotechnic Glow no longer concealed the murderous intent in his eyes. No need. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. Why? Aren't you someone who hates trouble? I am helping you solve your problem. Pyrotechnic Glow looked at Qin Feiyang in confusion. Just think about it. Once the guard reported this misunderstanding to the Grand Chieftain's residence, and the Grand Chieftain's residence reported it to the Sky Palace, what would happen then? They would be hunted down all over the lands. The purpose of the young man asking me to come to the northern continent is a little hard to fathom. So, why don't we create a bigger ruckus and see if anyone comes looking for us? Moreover, I would like to meet the big shots of the Sky Palace. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. Do as you wish. Hearing that, Pyrotechnic Glow shrugged and went over to the white-eyed wolf and said with a chuckle, Wolf cub. No, Big Brother Wolf, just tell me, what wine did you give to Yin Zhongtian? Big Brother? Is he that close to you? Don't try to make connections. The white-eyed wolf kicked Pyrotechnic Glow away in disdain. The group returned to Fengyuan City. The madman was silent along the way. Who knows what he was thinking? When Fengyuan City came into sight, the madman transmitted his voice. Old Qin, Is there a possibility that the young man's purpose is for us to take over the Sky Palace and use it for our own use? Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback. Now in the 4 continents, the Rogue Cultivator Alliance and the Demon Palace are on good terms with us. The Temple of Gods has submitted to us. Now the only one left is the Sky Palace. If we take over the Sky Palace, apart from the 4 Forbidden Lands and the Sky Cloud Sea, the entire Sky Cloud realm is basically under our control. The madman secretly said. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and transmitted his voice. Hearing what you said, it does make some sense. Actually, whether the young man means it or not, I feel that we should take over the Sky Palace. In the future, when the Land of Source gives birth to a few sovereign divine weapons, and when Pei Tianhong and the others become super experts, we who control the 4 continents will have the ability to compete with the 4 Forbidden Lands. The madman secretly laughed. Compete with them? Qin Feiyang murmured. Now, on the surface, the Sky Cloud realm was controlled by the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, the Demon Palace, the Temple of Gods, and the Sky Palace. But in reality, the ones who truly controlled the Sky Cloud realm were the 4 Forbidden Lands and the Sky Cloud Sea. Any one of these forces was enough to flatten the Sky Cloud realm. Compared to these behemoths, the humans living in the 4 continents were too weak. The human race. Wait. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang's body trembled and stopped in the void. His face was faintly pale. What's wrong? The madman and the others looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Qin Feiyang didn't speak for a long time, which made the white-eyed wolf and the madman anxious. After a long time, Qin Feiyang looked up at Princess Huofeng and said, "You guys enter the city first. I have some private matters to discuss with the white-eyed wolf and senior brother." Although the words were plain, it carried a majesty that couldn't be disobeyed. It gave people a kind of pressure from the soul, making them involuntarily obey. After Princess Huofeng and the others left, the madman frowned and said, "What are you doing? Don't scare us." I suddenly thought of a problem. Qin Feiyang raised his head and looked into the distance. His eyes were incomparably deep and carried a trace of sadness. One man and one wolf looked at each other and asked, "What problem? Didn't you notice a situation? The Sky Cloud Sea is the base camp of the sea beasts. The Heavy Region and the Een Demon Land are the base camps of the dragons and the Foam people. The other 2 Forbidden Lands, if nothing goes wrong, must be the base camp of some kind of divine beast. The strength of these 5 Forbidden Lands far surpasses the 4 continents." Qin Feiyang said. "Is there a problem?" The madman was suspicious. "There shouldn't be a problem." The white-eyed wolf followed and said. Qin Feiyang shook his head, took a deep breath, and said in a deep voice, "The problem is that we humans live in the eastern, western, northern, and southern continents." "Yes." The madman nodded and asked puzzledly, "But what's the problem? Any one of the 5 Forbidden Lands can crush the 4 continents. Is there no problem?" "Do you know what this means?" "This means that we humans have no right to speak in the Sky Cloud realm. The ones who truly control the Sky Cloud realm are the 5 Forbidden Lands. Facing the 5 Forbidden Lands, we humans are as insignificant as ants. We can only be described as lowly." Qin Feiyang said. The madman and the white-eyed wolf couldn't help but be shocked when they heard this. Although they had been in the Sky Cloud realm for so many years, they really didn't realize this point. Now that they heard Qin Feiyang say this, it really was the case. Putting aside all the grudges in the secular world, all humans belong to one race, and that is the human race. The human race, the dragons, the foam people, the sea beasts, and the mysterious races of the other 2 Forbidden Lands. In other words, there are a total of 6 races in the Sky Cloud realm. The human race is the weakest among them. If one day in the future, the other 5 races want to make a move on the human race of the Sky Cloud realm will inevitably face the disaster of extinction. Such a scene, just thinking about it, Qin Feiyang the madman, and the white-eyed wolf couldn't help but feel their scalps tingle. Chapter 3597. The white-eyed wolf said in surprise. "Do you think this is the young man's intention? He wants us to become the leaders of the human race and work hard to lead the human race to glory and fight against the 4 Forbidden Lands?" Qin Feiyang and madman were stunned. Become the leaders of the human race? They could fight against the 4 forbidden lands, but to become the leaders of the human race, this seemed to be giving them too much credit. Although they were quite strong now, they knew their limits. They didn't have the qualifications to become the leaders of the human race. However, perhaps this was the young man's intention. Headache. Qin Feiyang rubbed his forehead. He really couldn't understand the young man's thoughts. Who cares? After all, we've already conquered the western, eastern, and southern continents. It won't take much time to conquer the northern continent. Madman chuckled. Qin Feiyang glanced at Madman and shook his head. I really don't have that ambition. It's just one more ally, one more way to survive. Let's make a trip to the Sky Palace and see what the giants of the Sky Palace want. But before he finished, boom! Terrifying auras suddenly exploded in the sky above the city. Qin Feiyang, Madman, and the white-eyed wolf were shocked. They immediately looked up and saw a dozen figures soar into the sky and surround Princess Huofeng and the others. The leader was a middle-aged man. He was about 1.9 meters tall and emitted a valiant aura. One of them was the guard that had escaped before. What are you doing? Daifuku and Xiaofu protected the siblings and looked at the dozen people with gloomy expressions. The guard pointed at the 4 people and said angrily, City Lord, they're the ones who killed the guard commander. The middle-aged man's eyes darkened as he sized up Princess Huofeng and the others. 2 mere perfected dominators. 2 perfected dominators dared to kill the people of the City Lord's mansion? They must be the masked Azura's accomplices. Capture them and interrogate them. We'll definitely find the masked Azura's whereabouts. A person beside the middle-aged man walked out, and a terrifying aura erupted from his body. This was an old man in a black robe. He was emaciated and had sunken eyes. His eyes were like those of a snake, and they shone with a cold light. As the black-robed old man finished speaking, the others also erupted with powerful auras. Apart from the guard, all of them were perfection sovereign realm experts. If I tell you now that we're not the masked Azura's accomplices, you definitely won't believe me. Since that's the case, then let's cut the crap and bring it on. Pyrotechnic Glow glanced at the dozen or so people and sneered. Arrogant. The black-robed old man was furious. He waved his arm and shouted, Take him down. The dozen or so people surrounding them immediately pounced on the 4 of them. You overestimate yourself. Daifuku snorted coldly and stretched out his arm. The surrounding space immediately collapsed and turned into ice fragments that emitted a monstrous sharpness. In just an instant, the bodies of more than 10 people were pierced by the ice fragments. They were like sieves as blood gushed out. The middle-aged man and the black-robed old man retreated in shock. The law of spacetime, the ultimate profundity. They never expected that the other party was hiding an ultimate expert. Although Fengyuan City was the largest city in the northern continent, it was not the headquarters of the Heavenly Palace. Therefore, the city lord overseeing Fengyuan City was an ordinary perfection sovereign realm expert. How could an ordinary perfect sovereign realm expert not panic when facing a supreme expert who had grasped the supreme profundities of the spacetime laws? When they came back to their senses, the middle-aged man and the black-robed old man turned around and began to flee without looking back. Daifuku's eyes were full of contempt. His large hand was like an eagle's claw as it grabbed in the direction the 2 of them fled. The void collapsed, and the law of spacetime roared in all directions. The black-robed old man screamed and died on the spot. The middle-aged man stood there, terrified. He trembled as if he was waiting for death. Daifuku would definitely not show mercy to those who wanted to harm Princess Huofeng and Pyrotechnic Glow. The law of spacetime surged. The middle-aged man also screamed as his blood splattered in the sky. Seeing this scene, the people in the city below were dumbfounded. Even the city lord was killed without any hesitation? These people's guts were too big. Qin Feiyang, the middle-aged man, and the white-eyed wolf stepped on the air and landed beside Princess Huofeng and the other 3. The white-eyed wolf looked at the guard and asked, Where is the Heavenly Palace? Although this guard's cultivation was very weak, he had already retreated far away when the black-robed old man gave the order. Therefore he escaped death. Tian. The guard looked at Qin Feiyang and the others and stammered, unable to say a word for a long time. Obviously, he was deeply shocked by Daifuka's methods. Tian, your sister, hurry up, or I'll kill you. The white-eyed wolf glared fiercely. The guard quivered and hurriedly told Qin Feiyang and the others the coordinates. After Qin Feiyang and the others left, the guard immediately collapsed in the void, cold sweat breaking out all over his body. Shouldn't they have escaped? Why are they still going to the heavenly palace? Isn't he a little too bold? They have mastered the law of spacetime's supreme profundity. How can they not be bold? The law of spacetime's supreme profundity is very strong, but can it be stronger than a sovereign weapon? Don't forget that the heavenly palace doesn't only have a sovereign weapon. The few big shots are also supreme existences who have mastered the law of spacetime's supreme profundity. Running to the heavenly palace like this is a dead end. Also, are they the Master Jura's accomplices? Judging from your words, you seem to be very dissatisfied with the Master Jura. Am I? I'm just saying. Don't get agitated. Regardless of whether it's them or the Master Jura, regardless of whether they're in cahoots with the Master Jura, they're all good people. Everyone was discussing. From this, it could be seen that the Master Jura's reputation in the northern continent was quite good. It was actually a little hard to imagine. A Jura was usually the epitome of ruthlessness and cold-bloodedness, but now, the Master Jura was so respected by the people of the northern continent that it was more like the epitome of justice. Northern continent. Northern region. There was an endless stretch of mountains that stretched as far as the eye could see. In the mountains, the giant peaks pierced into the clouds like giant swords. The towering ancient trees appeared to be incomparably bold and vigorous. This place was called the 10,000 Peaks Mountain Range. It was said that there were exactly 10,000 huge peaks here. In the central region of the 10,000 Peaks Mountain Range, huge palaces floated in the sky. When one looked up, they were scattered all over like stars in the sky, shining with divine light and emitting a magnificent aura. In the center of the 10,000 Peaks Mountain Range, there was a huge peak that was thousands of feet tall. At the peak of the mountain, there was a stone staircase that led to the sky, leading to an ancient palace at the top of the sky. Next to the stone staircase that led to the sky, there was a stone tablet that was hundreds of feet tall. There were two big words engraved on it. Heavenly Palace. An old man was sitting cross-legged under the stone tablet. This person had white hair and a white beard. He was wearing a white robe and his eyes were slightly closed. He had a peaceful expression and exuded an immortal aura. Whoosh. Suddenly, a group of people landed in front of the huge peak. It was Qin Feiyang and the others. It's so grand. Looking at the heavenly palace in front of them, Qin Feiyang, the other two, and the white-eyed wolf were all shocked. Even First Princess Huofeng and the other three had a trace of surprise on their faces. This is the forbidden area of the heavenly palace. Please leave quickly. A hoarse voice sounded. The one who spoke was the white-robed old man at the peak of the mountain. However, he didn't open his eyes. His voice didn't have any killing intent, but it contained an irresistible majesty. This is an omnipotent expert. Daifuku looked at the white-robed old man and whispered. An omnipotent expert? Qin Feiyang and the others were stunned and couldn't help but look at the white-robed old man curiously. In the sky cloud realm, those who could be called omnipotent experts were only those who had mastered the ultimate profound. The white-eyed wolf asked. Then can you tell if he has mastered the ultimate profound of an ordinary law or the ultimate profound of an omnipotent law? Daifuku shook his head. Before the power of the law was activated, no aura could be felt. So, only when the other party activated the law could they determine what kind of law the other party had mastered. Qin Feiyang landed on the peak of the mountain with a trace of respect on his face. He cupped his hands and said, Senior, this junior has something to see the Heavenly Palace Master. I hope that Senior can report to him. Madman and the others also landed beside Qin Feiyang. Looking at Qin Feiyang's humble attitude, the Daifuku brothers were quite impressed. With Qin Feiyang's current cultivation, even if this white-haired old man had mastered the ultimate profound of an omnipotent law, he didn't need to lower himself at all. Because of Qin Feiyang's strength, he could be called the #1 person in the human race, so there was no problem even if he called the other party's name. But Qin Feiyang still regarded himself as a junior. From this, it could be seen that this was a very cultivated young man. The white-robed old man slowly opened his eyes and raised his head to look at Qin Feiyang and the others. Because Qin Feiyang and the others had deliberately concealed their aura, the white-haired old man couldn't see their depth. However, whether it was Qin Feiyang, the white-eyed wolf, or Princess Huafeng and the other three, they all exuded an extraordinary temperament. Moreover, their expressions were extremely calm. Although their expressions were humble, they weren't humble. One had to know. This was the Sky Palace. Normally, when one came here, not to mention being so calm, they probably didn't even have the courage to speak. But these people in front of him were neither humble nor overbearing and were calm. Their identities were definitely not simple. You are. The white-robed old man was suspicious. Junior. Qin Feiyang was about to speak. Elder Wang, be careful. Suddenly, a cry of alarm sounded. For young men and women rushed over from afar and landed beside the white-robed old man. What's wrong? The white-robed old man looked at the four of them in confusion. These four people were all disciples of the Sky Palace. Their figures were tall and straight, and their auras were extraordinary. At this moment, the four of them coldly looked at Qin Feiyang and the others, and said in a deep voice, Elder Wang, they just killed the city lord, the guard commander and others in Fengyuan City. Their methods are extremely ruthless. It can't be. Elder Wang was surprised. We saw it with our own eyes. When we saw them asking for the coordinates of the Sky Palace, we immediately rushed back. I didn't expect that they would really come to our Sky Palace. After the four of them finished speaking, they looked at Qin Feiyang and the others and berated in a stern voice. You guys are really bold. Not only did you kill the city lord and others in public, but you also came to the Sky Palace to cause trouble. Do you really think that the Sky Palace is a place where you can behave atrociously? Chapter 3598. What? The white-robed old man's expression changed when he heard that. He looked at Qin Feiyang and the others and asked, Is what they said true? That's right. Qin Feiyang nodded. Elder Wang, did you see that? He admitted it himself. He's simply lawless. The four young men and women said angrily. Elder Wang looked at the four of them, then looked at Qin Feiyang and the others and asked, Why did you kill them? You're a reasonable old man. You didn't attack them directly. Otherwise, you'd be lying on the ground as a corpse now. The madman chuckled. How dare you? How dare you speak so arrogantly in front of Elder Wang? Do you know Elder Wang's identity in the Heavenly Palace? The four young men shouted angrily. Princess Huafeng frowned and said with a smile, Do you know who we are? You. The four of them looked at Qin Feiyang and the others and sneered. I don't care who you are. If you dare to provoke the Heavenly Palace, you'll die. Very well. Princess Huafeng nodded. When the Daifuka brothers saw that, killing intent surged in their eyes. Qin Feiyang raised his arm and stopped the two of them. He looked at Elder Wang and said with a smile, We're not here to cause trouble. Please help us report this to the Heavenly Palace. One of the young men shouted, You killed the city governor and the others in front of everyone. And you're saying that you're not here to cause trouble? Are you kidding? You seem to have a lot to say. Do you think that we won't dare to teach you a lesson because you're backed by the Heavenly Palace? The white-eyed wolf raised his eyebrows. Try me if you dare. The young man looked at the white-eyed wolf provocatively. He did not believe that these people would dare to attack him here. The Heavenly Palace was above. The Heavenly Palace was the ruler of the northern continent. As a disciple of the Heavenly Palace, of course, he had the confidence. Try me if you dare. The white-eyed wolf muttered. As the power of law appeared, he instantly appeared in front of the four young men. This is, Elder Wang's eyes narrowed. He looked at the four of them and shouted, Retreat! But it was too late. The white-eyed wolf swung its claws, and the four of them immediately let out a miserable cry. Their bodies exploded in the void, and their flesh and blood splattered everywhere. Only their souls were left. Elder Wang. The four divine souls panicked and hid behind Elder Wang. Their faces were filled with fear. This is the first time I've met someone who took the initiative to ask for a beating. Now that I've made my move, what next? The white-eyed wolf stood opposite Elder Wang and looked at the four of them mockingly. The four of them were terrified. He had never imagined that the other party would be so bold as to brazenly make a move in the Sky Palace. Elder Wang glanced at the white-eyed wolf before looking at Qin Feiyang and the others. There was a hint of fear in his eyes as he said, "Even a cat has mastered the supreme profundity of the law of time. You must be extraordinary." What? It actually grasps the supreme profundity of the laws of time. The divine souls of the four young men and women could not help but tremble. Qin Feiyang said with a smile, "Senior, you'll know who we are later. Now please report to the Sky Palace. Otherwise, we'll have to force our way into the Sky Palace." "There's no need for that. We're here in person." As soon as Qin Feiyang finished speaking, a cold voice was heard above the Sky Palace. Qin Feiyang and the others raised their heads and saw two men and a woman descending from the sky like three divine kings. Their auras were unfathomable. The woman leading the group was around 30 years old. She was wearing a palace dress and had taken good care of herself. There was not a single wrinkle at the corner of her eyes. Her hair fluttered in the wind, and there was a great sense of authority between her brows. Behind her were two middle-aged men. One was wearing a white robe, while the other was wearing a black robe. They both looked to be in their 30s. The white-robed middle-aged man had a slender figure and a gentle smile on his face. Coupled with his elegant temperament, he gave off a harmless feeling. The black-robed middle-aged man was like a sharp sword, emitting a threatening aura. His dark eyes, in particular, were filled with a piercing sharpness. "Greetings, Lord Temple Masters. Lord Temple Masters, you must uphold justice for your disciples." The four young men and women immediately ran over and knelt in front of the three, looking aggrieved. "You may leave." The woman in the palace dress waved her hand. The four stood up and retreated to the side. Then, they looked at Qin Feiyang and the others with resentment in their eyes. "Why are you all here?" Elder Wang turned to the three of them and asked. The woman in the palace dress said calmly, "An ultimate powerhouse who has grasped the supreme profundity of the laws of time has arrived in the northern continent. How can we not come out to see for ourselves?" Obviously, they had already received news of what happened in Fengyuan City. The laws of time? Elder Wang could not help but be stunned. He turned to the white-eyed wolf and frowned. "Isn't it the laws of time?" "That's not it." The woman in the palace dress raised her head and looked at Daifuku. A cold glint flashed in her eyes as she smiled. "Your Excellency is really impressive in Fengyuan City. You killed the people of the Heavenly Palace just like that." Daifuku said calmly, "I've already warned them. They were the ones who asked for it." "So it's our fault for killing the people of the Heavenly Palace? Now that you've come to the Heavenly Palace, do you want us to apologize to you?" The woman in the palace dress asked. "I'm not interested in the Heavenly Palace. It's not my idea to come to the Heavenly Palace." "It's Qin." Daifuku was about to say Qin Feiyang's name, but he suddenly realized that Qin Feiyang was deliberately hiding his identity. So he changed his words and said, "It's this brother who wants to come to the Heavenly Palace." For a moment Elder Wang, the woman in the palace dress, and the two middle-aged men all looked at Qin Feiyang. "May I ask who the three seniors are?" Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and asked with a smile. The middle-aged man in black's eyes turned cold as he shouted without mercy, "You're not qualified to know our identity." Qin Feiyang was stunned. There was no need to be so arrogant. Swoosh. Suddenly, two figures appeared out of thin air on the side of the mountain peak. Qin Feiyang turned his head and frowned slightly. It was the guard from before, and the old man from the jewelry store. A cold light flashed in the madman's eyes as he looked at the guard and said, "What did you do to the old man?" Facing the madman's gaze, the fear on the guard's face became even stronger. The old man also had a face of fear. "We ordered him to bring it here," the middle-aged man in black said. "What do you mean?" The madman looked at the middle-aged man in black and asked. "Not long ago, when the subordinates sent us a message to report this matter, we already asked in detail. The cause of this matter is the death of his grandson. We just want to know, why are you so sure that it was the other two disciples of the Heavenly Palace who attacked his grandson?" The woman in the palace dress said. "On what basis?" On the basis that we can read their thoughts. The madman said. Read their memories? Let's not talk about whether you have such means or not. In this situation, your side of the story has no credibility. Because no one knows the truth. In other words, even if you really read their memories, it doesn't prove that what you said is true. The woman in the palace dress said indifferently. Qin Feiyang said helplessly. The key is that we didn't lie. The middle-aged man in black said with disdain. If you say you didn't lie, then you didn't lie. May I ask who you are? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Sirs, please be clear about this. These little brothers are really not lying. It's true that they were tempted by money and sneak attacked my grandson. They even came to blackmail this old man. When the old man saw that Qin Feiyang and the others were wronged, he quickly looked at the woman in the palace dress and pointed at Elder Wang, saying anxiously, during this period, I came to the heavenly palace several times, but I was stopped by this lord. He doesn't believe my words. Elder Wang sighed. If you have evidence, this old man will definitely stand up for you. But if you can't, what can this old man do? I can't let you enter the heavenly palace to mess around. That's the truth. If you don't believe me, I swear to the heavens. If there's even half a lie, I'll be destroyed by the heavens and die a horrible death. The old man was burning with anxiety. Tiske. Who wouldn't swear? In my opinion, it's nothing more than the death of his grandson, and no one to take care of him. So he wants to extort some money to solve the problem of his retirement in the future. As for these people, they must be the accomplices he invited to put on this show with him. The four young men and women looked at the old man, and Qin Feiyang with sneers on their faces. White-eyed wolf, kill them. Qin Feiyang's eyes turned cold. His physical body had already been destroyed by the white-eyed wolf, but he still didn't know how to restrain himself. It seemed that he wouldn't shed tears until he saw the coffin. I've been waiting for you to say that. The white-eyed wolf bared his teeth. He activated the moment of time, and appeared behind the four people in an instant, slapping out with his claws. How dare you? The middle-aged man in black was furious. But the white-eyed wolf turned a deaf ear to him. As his claws fell, the four people screamed and their divine souls were annihilated on the spot. Following that, the white-eyed wolf looked at the middle-aged man in black with disdain. He activated the moment of time, and instantly landed on Qin Feiyang's shoulder. You're courting death. The middle-aged man in black's eyes surged with killing intent. A wave of the law of destruction emerged and rushed toward the white-eyed wolf. You're the ones courting death. The madman's killing intent erupted. He activated the law of destruction and blasted out. Boom. The two's law of destruction collided with a loud bang. A terrifying wave instantly swept out in all directions. The guard and the old man had a look of horror on their faces. This was the fluctuation of the law of destruction. Moreover, it was from two perfected sovereigns. How could small fries like them withstand it? However, at the same time, the Daifuku brothers took action and forcefully suppressed the fluctuation. Seeing this scene, not only the guard and the old man, but even the woman in palace attire, the middle-aged man in white, and Elder Wang heaved a sigh of relief. If this fluctuation were to spread out, the entire Myriad Peak Mountain would probably be razed to the ground. But then, the woman in palace attire, the middle-aged man in white, and Elder Wang couldn't help but look at the madman. Law of destruction. Who exactly were these people? One controlled the law of space and time. One controlled the law of time. One controlled the law of destruction. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and looked at the woman in palace attire and the other three. He sighed and said, We really have no intention of causing trouble, so please don't be so aggressive. The woman in palace attire glanced at Qin Feiyang and the others, then looked at the old man who was caught by the guard. Finally, she looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Then tell us, why should we believe your words? If you can't explain it clearly, then don't even think about leaving the heavenly palace alive today. As the woman in palace attire's voice fell, a reddish gold bead appeared. It was the size of a baby's fist. There were complicated and mysterious patterns engraved on it. It looked like the totem of a divine beast, the golden crow, and its divine light illuminated the world. As soon as this divine bead appeared, The pressure of a sovereign divine weapon rolled out and instantly enveloped Qin Feiyang and the others. Obviously, this was the sovereign divine weapon of the heavenly palace. Why? Qin Feiyang glanced at the reddish-gold divine bead without the slightest fear. Then he looked at the woman in palace attire, and a terrifying pressure gradually emerged from his body. He said word by word, "Because I, Qin Feiyang, am called Sovereign Divine Weapon." Chapter 3599. Qin Feiyang. As soon as these 3 words came out, the eyes of the leaders of the heavenly palace trembled. The guards and the old man not far away were also shocked. If one were to talk about who was the most famous in the current Sky Cloud realm, it would undoubtedly be Qin Feiyang. He was someone who had destroyed the Blood Palace, crushed the first prince of the dragons, killed the fire dragon, and looked down on all the heroes in the world. There were countless young talents in the world who were unreachable and dazzling in front of others, but in front of Qin Feiyang, they had to lower their proud heads. You could not know who the leaders of the heavenly palace were, and you could not know the existence of the dragons and the phone people, but you could not know the name Qin Feiyang. Just based on the 3 words, I Qin Feiyang. These 3 words definitely had the power to convince everyone. However, the person in front of them looked completely different from Qin Feiyang. At the same time, many people walked out of the palaces floating in the sky. There were disciples and managers of the heavenly palace. At this moment, they were all looking down at Qin Feiyang and the others. After all, even the sovereign divine weapon had appeared. How could they not be alarmed? Their faces were also filled with shock. Is this person really Qin Feiyang? He looks so impressive. You haven't seen Qin Feiyang before? Even if you haven't seen him, you should have seen his portrait. His portrait is circulating everywhere now. Take a look, I have a portrait of him here. A young woman waved her hand, and a scroll painting appeared. It floated in the void and then slowly opened. The eyes of the surrounding people were focused on the scroll painting. They were filled with anticipation. Soon, the scroll painting opened and 2 people and a wolf appeared. The person on the left was a young man in white. He was 7 feet tall, and his black hair was like a waterfall. His eyes were bright like the moon and he had a faint smile on his face. He was like a god and exuded an ethereal aura. The person on the right was a black-clothed youth. His facial features were grave and stern, and there was an invisible bone-piercing sharpness that made people feel a sense of fear in their hearts. A wolf was lying in front of the 2 of them. This wolf's fur was as dazzling as gold. There were 2 golden wings on its back, and there was a mysterious flame mark between its eyebrows. It looked incomparably majestic. Did you see that? This white-clothed youth is Qin Feiyang. This black-clothed youth is Madman Mo. The wolf lying in front of them is the golden-winged wolf king. Look at those people down there. Which one looks like them? When the young woman opened the scroll and spoke, she looked at the figure in the picture with stars in her eyes. Hearing this, everyone looked down. Indeed, there was no one who looked like Qin Feiyang, Madman Mo, or Golden-Winged Wolf King. Aren't they a little too bold? They even dare to pretend to be Qin Feiyang. It seems that they don't know Qin Feiyang's methods. Some people couldn't help but sneer. Below, at the peak of the mountain, there was dead silence. Suddenly, the black-clothed middle-aged man opened his mouth and broke the silence. Do you think we have never seen Qin Feiyang before? But before he finished speaking, Qin Feiyang directly took out a facial restoration pill and threw it into his mouth. Very quickly, under everyone's surprised gaze, his true appearance was restored. It's really him. The black-clothed middle-aged man's gaze trembled. It's really Qin Feiyang. So he changed his appearance before. Come and see, the famous Qin Feiyang of the Sky Cloud realm has come to our Sky Palace. What? Qin Feiyang has come to our Sky Palace? Impossible. How could such a big shot like him come to our Sky Palace? I'm not lying to you. It's really him. Previously, there were still many disciples who had not come out of seclusion. When they heard the news, they all ran out in disbelief. In the end, it was really this famous existence. Since Qin Feiyang is here, then are Madman Mo and the Golden-Winged Wolf King also here? Wait! The big fat cat on Qin Feiyang's shoulder has activated the supreme profound of the law of time. And the young man next to it has also activated the law of destruction. It is said that the golden-winged wolf king has mastered the law of time, and Madman Emo has also mastered the law of destruction. Could it be the two of them? The eyes of the disciples in the sky fell on the madman and the white-eyed wolf. The madman and the white-eyed wolf looked at each other and smiled. The madman took a facial restoration pill, and the white-eyed wolf's entire body also emitted a dazzling golden light. Soon, they also restored their true appearances. As expected, the disciples of the Sky Palace couldn't help but become excited. This was their idol. Qin Feiyang, who has mastered the supreme profound of two supreme laws, has the eye of heaven that can replicate some attacks, and has a supreme killing technique comparable to a sovereign divine weapon, Slaughter Domain. The madman, who has an arrogant and unruly personality, also has mastered the supreme profound of two supreme laws, and also has a heaven-defying battle soul. He has the ability to reach the heavens. The golden-winged wolf king. This guy is even more ridiculously strong. He has actually mastered the supreme profound of 5 supreme laws. These 2 people and 1 wolf can be said to be the current Sky Cloud Realm's existence. Even the giants of the older generation of the various continents have to bow their heads in front of them. It can be said that they are already standing at the peak of the 4 continents, and no one can shake them. I didn't expect them to be so popular in the human world. Daifuka transmitted his voice. What's so great about them? Princess Huofeng pursed her lips. Daifuka laughed and transmitted his voice. Then do we have to restore our original appearances? You want to steal their limelight? Princess Huofeng secretly asked. Daifuku was slightly taken aback and hurriedly said, "This old man has never thought of that." Princess Huofeng rolled her eyes at him, and raised her head to look at the disciples of Sky Palace above. Are these humans fools? They actually treat these 3 wicked people as their idols? After a while, the woman in palace attire finally came back to her senses and cupped her hands with a smile. So it's Brother Qin, Brother Emo, and Brother Wolf King. Sorry for the disrespect. Don't say such polite words. If it weren't for you forcing us, would we have revealed our true appearances? It's really hard to keep a low profile. How about it? Do you believe me now? The white-eyed wolf raised his eyebrows. Since it's the 3 of you, then it must be true. The woman in palace attire smiled and put away the golden divine pearl. What a joke. The madman alone has 8 sovereign divine weapons, and the Sky Palace only has 1 sovereign divine weapon. Isn't it showing off in front of an expert? Fortunately, these people are more reasonable, otherwise, Sky Palace would be in big trouble this time. For example, if people like the Prince and Princess Dragons dared to offend them, they would definitely raise Sky Palace to the ground. So it's them who helped me. The old man who was caught by the guard muttered to himself. He had long heard that these 2 people and 1 wolf were kind and sincere. Now that he saw them, they were indeed worthy of their reputation. Good people. At the same time, the guard was also terrified to the extreme. He had actually provoked these 3 ferocious people again and again. Isn't this courting death? The madman stared at the guard and shouted, "Why aren't you letting go of that old man?" The guard quivered and quickly let go of the old man. He knelt in the air and said, "3 lords, please spare me. I really didn't know it was you. Otherwise, even if I had 100 guts, I wouldn't dare to do this." Scram. The madman waved his hand and the guard immediately scrambled to the side. "Old man, are you all right?" The madman stepped forward and helped the old man up. "I'm fine. Thank you, my lord." "Thank you, Lord Qin." "Thank you, Lord Wolf King. It's you who helped my grandson clear his name. Thank you very much." The old man knelt in the air and kowtowed repeatedly. "This is what we should do." The white-eyed wolf stepped forward and waved his claw. A large pile of soul stones and divine crystals appeared, like 2 mountains. There were at least tens of millions of them. He then opened a space-time passage and said, "These soul stones and divine crystals are enough for you to retire. Go back first." Quite generous. Princess Huofeng muttered. "I can't accept this." The old man didn't accept it and quickly waved his hand. The white-eyed wolf raised his eyebrows and said, "I told you to accept it, so accept it. Why are you spouting so much nonsense?" Are you looking for a beating? Hearing this, Princess Huofeng and the others were speechless. Even the gifts they gave were so overbearing? The old man glanced at Qin Feiyang and the madman. Seeing their kind smiles, he nodded and said, "Thank you, Lord Wolf King. This old man will forever remember your kindness today." Saying so, he put away the soul stones and divine crystals, and turned to enter the space-time passage. "You can leave too." The white-eyed wolf looked at the guard. Yes. The guard nodded and turned to run for his life. Elder Wang saw everything and said with a hoarse laugh, "The three of you respect your elders. This old man admires your righteousness." The white-eyed wolf joked, "Now, do you still say that we are the Mas de Jura's accomplices?" The woman and the other three looked at each other with awkward expressions. Before, they really thought that this group of people was the Mas de Jura's accomplices. The woman smiled and said, "Since you've come to the heavenly palace, please come in and have a seat so that we can play host to you." The madman said, "That's no problem. But until now we still don't know who it is." The woman patted her head and said apologetically, "Sorry, I'll introduce you." The woman pointed at the middle-aged man in white and said with a smile, "This is our Sky Palace's Vice Palace Master." The middle-aged man in white smiled gently at Qin Feiyang and the others. The woman pointed at the middle-aged man in black and said, "And this is our Sky Palace's Law Enforcement Palace Master." The young man in black looked at Qin Feiyang and the others and cupped his hands. "I hope you can forgive my previous offense." Qin Feiyang waved his hand. The woman looked at Elder Wang and said with a smile, "This old man is our Sky Palace's Grand Elder." Elder Wang also cupped his hands and said with a smile, "I hope you can forgive my offense." Qin Feiyang nodded and smiled. He looked at the woman and said, "Senior, you are the Sky Palace's Palace Master?" "Yes." The woman nodded and said, "But I don't dare to call you senior. Your current strength is already above us. Logically speaking, we should be the ones calling you lords. At least you know your place." The white-eyed wolf chuckled. The woman in the court dress did not get angry. She stepped aside and said respectfully, "Please." Qin Feiyang and the others were about to take a step forward, but at this moment, a voice full of hostility sounded. "So it's the famous Qin Feiyang, Madman Mo, and Golden Wing Wolf King." Chapter 3600. This voice. Qin Feiyang and the others narrowed their eyes and turned to look at the source of the voice. Although they had only heard this cold voice once, it left a deep impression on them. It was the Masque de Jura. The four great heads and the people in the Sky Hall all looked in the direction of the voice as their eyes flickered with a cold glint. The Masque de Jura was no stranger to the entire northern continent, especially those in the Sky Hall. The Masque de Jura was like a nightmare that haunted them. Once they stepped out of the Sky Hall, they had to be careful at all times because no one knew when the Masque de Jura would appear behind them. Not far away, in the mountains, a black figure stepped into the sky step by step. His aura carried a ferocious aura, and the skull-shaped mask on his face was particularly eye-catching. "It's indeed you, arrogant bastard. How dare you barge into my Myriad Peak Mountain?" The Sky Hall's law enforcement hall master's eyes surged with killing intent as a terrifying aura covered the sky. However, the Masque de Jura was not affected by this aura at all. His dark eyes were filled with disgust and indifference as he walked to the void not far from the peak of the mountain. He stopped and looked at Qin Feiyang, the madman, and the white-eyed wolf. "This guy is quite powerful," the white-eyed wolf muttered. "Yes. Perfect sovereign realm cultivation. Moreover, he's not afraid of the Sky Hall's overlords at all. To have such confidence, it means that he might have grasped a supreme profundity." The madman's eyes were filled with curiosity. What kind of face was hidden under this mask? Faced with the Masque de Jura's silent attitude, the law enforcement hall master was furious and shouted, "How arrogant!" Boom! A wave of death law roared out. A dark red light instantly appeared in this world as a waning moon slowly rose. The aura of death enveloped the surroundings. Death law, supreme profundity. Qin Feiyang's eyes narrowed. How much hatred did he have for the Masque de Jura to activate the supreme profundity, right from the start? The Masque de Jura looked at the black-clothed middle-aged man and sneered. Are you in such a hurry to kill me because you're afraid that I'll expose your evil deeds? Evil deeds. Qin Feiyang and the others were stunned. What did he mean? The 4 overlords of the Sky Hall were puzzled when they heard him. The law enforcement hall master frowned and said, "What do you mean? Speak clearly." "What do I mean? You don't know?" The masked Azura sneered. He looked at Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf and asked, "Do you know why I specifically kill the Heavenly Palace's disciples?" The disciples of the Heavenly Hall in the sky were also puzzled because they. But as the ruler of the northern continent, not only did the Sky Hall not deal with him impartially, but they even took him in as a disciple and protected him in the Sky Hall. The masked Azura roared with righteous indignation. He looked at Qin Feiyang, the masked Azura, and the white-eyed wolf and asked, "Don't you think they should be condemned for doing such a thing?" "Is that so?" Qin Feiyang and the others looked at the 4 overlords of the Sky Hall when they heard him. The 4 of them remained silent. "Nothing to say?" The masked Azura laughed coldly, and then he raised his head to look at the disciples of the Sky Hall and said, "All of you should be aware of this demon, right?" "We know." However, back then, Lord Palace Master personally said that this man had already been executed. All the disciples in the Sky Hall were puzzled. "It seems like you have been deceived by them. This person is not dead. Saying that he has been executed is just a lie to deceive the world. In fact, he is now cultivating in seclusion somewhere in the Sky Hall. Moreover, I know that your temple master has taken him in as a disciple and personally taught him cultivation." The masked Azura roared. "Impossible. Don't slander our temple master." The Sky Hall disciples said angrily. "Slander?" The masked Azura sneered. "I have no enmity with her. Is there a need to slander her?" The madman frowned and looked at the masked Azura. He asked in confusion, "What is going on? Can you be more clear?" The masked Azura took a deep breath and looked at the 2 people and the wolf. He sighed. Back then, a person called Qin Feng appeared in the northern continent out of thin air. This person's methods were extremely ruthless. He killed millions of people in a day, and even wiped out a city with hundreds of thousands of people. What? Not to mention Qin Feiyang, the masked Azura, and the white-eyed wolf. Even Princess Huafeng and the others were shocked. You didn't see the bloody scene. It was simply outrageous. He didn't even let go of newborn babies. The most terrifying thing is that this person not only killed innocent people, but also absorbed their flesh and divine souls, leaving behind white bones. It is said that he can use this method to speed up his growth. The masked Azura said in a deep voice. What? Qin Feiyang, the masked Azura, and the white-eyed wolf's eyes shook. Absorbing the flesh and divine souls of others. Wasn't this the same method as Li Feng? Qin Feng Li Feng? Could it be the same person? According to my investigation, in just 2 years, he has killed hundreds of millions of people. In just 2 years, he crazily absorbed the flesh and blood of others, and went from the half-step 9th heaven realm to the peak imperishable realm. This world focuses on cultivation. Whether it's humans or other creatures, they all have to cultivate. However, this kind of inhumane cultivation method is the behavior of an animal. The masked Azura roared, his face filled with grief and anger. No way. He went from the half-step 9th heaven realm to the peak imperishable realm in 2 years. Hearing this, even Princess Huafeng and the others were shocked. That was 2 whole realms. Even a monster that didn't appear in 10,000 years would need hundreds of thousands or millions of years. But this person only used 2 years? Was this a joke? The white-eyed wolf asked, Little Qinzi, do you remember the last time you saw Li Feng? What was his cultivation level? I remember that the last time I saw him was outside the forest of gods and demons. Didn't many people die in my hands back then? I heard Xueling say that Li Feng could enter the 9th heaven realm after absorbing their flesh and blood. This means that before entering the 4th level, his cultivation level should be around the half-step 9th heaven realm. Qin Feiyang guessed. The Madzi said in surprise, so this Qin Feng might be Li Feng? That shouldn't be. Didn't we ask the Demon Hall and the Rogue Cultivator Alliance to investigate Li Feng's whereabouts? If it's really Li Feng, it's impossible for the Demon Hall and the Rogue Cultivator Alliance to not have any information. Qin Feiyang frowned. The Madzi said, then what if he changed his appearance? After all, he changed his name. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed slightly as he turned to the master de jura and asked, do you know what this Qin Feng looks like? I do. The master de jura nodded. With a wave of his hand, a phantom condensed. It was a silver-haired youth with an ordinary appearance. Not Li Feng? The white-eyed wolf raised his eyebrows. But we can't be sure that he's not Li Feng. After all, we said before that he might have changed his appearance. We have to see him in person to be sure. The Madzi said. Then what if it's really Li Feng? The white-eyed wolf looked at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang clenched his fists. Towards Li Feng, he had a very complicated feeling in his heart, because the Li Feng in the past was very pure and kind, but after the dragons slaughtered the Cloud Mountain village, seeing his family fall one by one in front of him, coupled with the temptation of the blood ancestor, he gradually turned into a demon king. But, if this Qin Feng was really Li Feng, then he had slaughtered hundreds of millions of lives in the northern continent. Such a sin, if Qin Feiyang sat by and did nothing, his conscience would be condemned. Originally, the master de jura spoke again. Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf looked up. When I heard that Qin Feng had been executed, I also thought it was true. But not long after, I suddenly found out that Qin Feng didn't die at all. Not only did he not die, he was even accepted as a disciple by the Sky Palace Master, and was secretly protected. This kind of heinous criminal, even a person with a little bit of conscience can't let him get away scot-free. However, the Sky Palace has the 4 giants and the sovereign divine weapon. I can't kill my way into the Sky Palace, so I can only kill the disciples of the Sky Palace outside. But the disciples of the Sky Palace who died in my hands all deserve to die. They bullied people outside and committed all kinds of crimes. I can't bear to see them like that. So, although my hands are stained with blood, I have never killed a good person. Originally, I planned to continue like this and slowly find a chance to kill Qin Feng. But just a while ago, I saw you in Fengyuan City. Although you looked very ordinary on the surface, you dared to openly kill the city lord and others in Fengyuan City. I think your identities should not be simple. So, I have been secretly following you. As expected, you are Qin Feiyang, Madman Mo, and Golden Wings Wolf King. When I saw that it was you, I saw hope, so I took the initiative to come out and tell you everything. Because you have the ability to seek justice for those innocent lives that died tragically. The master de jura said. Qin Feiyang, Madman Mo, and the white-eyed wolf heard this and were moved. Although this man was known as a jura, everything he did was for the sake of justice. Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and said, thank you for your trust in us. We will investigate this matter clearly. I believe in you. That's all I have to say. We will meet again if fate allows. The master de jura cupped his hands and smiled, then turned around and left without looking back. A cold light flashed in the eyes of the black-clothed middle-aged man. He was about to chase after him, but Madman took a step forward and stopped the black-clothed middle-aged man. He frowned and said, he did not do anything wrong. What qualifications do you have to chase after him? Chapter 36:01. But, the black-clothed man raised his eyebrows. But what? Could it be that he exposed you guys in front of everyone and made you guys angry? The madman sneered as he glanced at the 4 leaders of the Sky Palace. When the 4 magnates heard this, they could not help but lower their heads, showing a guilty conscience. I really didn't expect the Sky Palace to do such a thing. Let's go. Bring us to see this Qin Feng. I want to see how capable he is to make the 4 of you willing to risk universal condemnation to protect him. The madman sneered. This Qin Feng might be Li Feng, so he naturally had to investigate. Actually, we also cherish talents. Although he did commit heinous crimes in the past, he has turned over a new leaf. The woman in palace attire sighed. Since they had been exposed, there was no need to hide it anymore. As soon as this was said, the disciples of the Sky Palace above were in an uproar. What the master de jura said was actually true. Was this how the palace master and the others dealt with evil people? It was too disappointing. Even if we cherish talents, we can't go against the entire world. Lead the way. Qin Feiyang sighed. If it was really Li Feng, he could only kill him to get rid of evil for the people. Because this was no longer a small sin, but a heinous sin. Back in the Nether King's hell, he had already given Li Feng a chance. He didn't expect that not only did Li Feng not listen, he even became worse. Now that things had come to this, he couldn't be blamed for being ruthless. Under the lead of the 4 leaders, Qin Feiyang and the others stepped into the Sky Palace. The magnificent palace was like a small island floating in the clouds. At a glance, it was as if the ancient Sky Palace had reappeared in the world, filled with an ethereal aura. The gazes of all the disciples in the Sky Hall gathered on Qin Feiyang's group. Their eyes were filled with admiration. After a while, the group arrived in the sky above a palace. This palace was relatively old, and there wasn't a single person around. It was extremely quiet. Moreover, with the cultivation of Qin Feiyang and the others, they could see that there was a time array around the palace. He's in the palace. The woman hesitated for a moment before sighing. Qin Feiyang looked at the white-eyed wolf. The white-eyed wolf took a step forward and rushed toward the main hall. However, before he could get close, a barrier appeared in front of the white-eyed wolf. White-eyed wolf was surprised. This was a barrier condensed from the power of laws, and it was filled with boundless vitality. Qin Feiyang and Madman also looked at the barrier suspiciously. Suddenly, their gazes trembled. This was the law of life. Because the mermaid princess also grasped the law of life, it was easy for her to tell. The law of life. In other words, one of the 4 overlords of the Sky Hall had mastered the law of life. Who laid this? The white-eyed wolf quivered and turned to look at the 4 leaders. Not long ago, it had been discussing with Qin Feiyang that the last law would be the law of life. It hadn't expected to encounter it so soon. It's me. The woman in palace attire spoke. With a wave of her hand, the barrier dissipated. The white-eyed wolf stared at the woman in palace attire, and his eyes emitted a green light. This gaze made the woman in palace attire panic. What did this wolf cub want to do? Suddenly, the aura of the law of life emerged from the main hall. Qin Feiyang, Madman, and the white-eyed wolf regained their senses and looked at the main hall in surprise. This is the aura of the law of space-time. Quickly go in. He might be trying to escape. Madman shouted. The white-eyed wolf rushed to the front of the main hall and smashed the door with one claw. Inside the main hall, there was a space-time passage. The back of a silver-haired young man had already stepped into the space-time passage and was about to disappear. Stop! The white-eyed wolf shouted. However, the silver-haired young man turned a deaf ear and didn't turn back. Still want to run? The white-eyed wolf's eyes flashed coldly. He activated instant time and instantly rushed into the passage. Quickly follow. Qin Feiyang's eyes darkened. He didn't expect Qin Feng to have mastered the law of space-time. However, when he and Madman rushed to the space-time passage, the passage collapsed. He ran without seeing us. What is he afraid of? Madman frowned and looked at Qin Feiyang. Could he really be Li Feng? Could it be that the young man's purpose in the northern continent is actually Li Feng? Qin Feiyang remained silent. The 4 leaders of the Sky Palace looked at each other. Who was Li Feng? Suddenly, Qin Feiyang looked at the 4 leaders and asked, where could he have gone? The 4 of them shook their heads. Is there anyone else with him? Qin Feiyang asked again. No, it's just him. The woman in palace attire said. Just him. Qin Feiyang and Madman looked at each other. If it was really Li Feng, then where was the remnant soul of the blood progenitor? Li Feng and Blood Spirit had always been together. Since Li Feng was in the northern continent, Blood Spirit should also be in the northern continent. Will the white-eyed wolf be in danger? Princess Huofeng asked. He shouldn't be. After all, he has mastered the supreme profundity of the 5 supreme laws. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Pyrotechnic Glow looked at his sister meaningfully, then turned to the 4 leaders and asked, what's Qin Feng's cultivation level? Greater Mastery Ruler. The woman in palace attire replied. Just a Greater Mastery Ruler. He's definitely not a match for the wolf cub. Pyrotechnic Glow looked at Princess Huofeng and chuckled. His sister, who had always been arrogant, was actually worried about the white-eyed wolf. It was really strange. White continent. At the edge of the northwest, there was an endless glacier here. Snow was falling from the sky, and the cold wind was blowing. It was cold to the bone. This place. It was one of the 4 forbidden areas, the Death Glacier. Buzz. Accompanied by a buzzing sound, a space-time passage appeared above the entrance. A silver-haired young man rushed out like lightning and entered the Death Glacier without looking back. When he entered the Death Glacier, he raised his hand and waved it. A surge of divine power surged out and blasted at the space-time passage behind him. At this moment, the white-eyed wolf appeared. Although it was blasted by the divine power, it was not injured at all. After all, its current physical body had already reached the supreme level. However, the space-time passage behind it collapsed on the spot. The white-eyed wolf waved its claws, and the fluctuations that filled the void dissipated. It scanned the front and immediately saw the silver-haired young man who had entered the Death Glacier. This seems to be the Death Glacier? You're really bold. The white-eyed wolf snorted coldly. It activated Instant of Light and directly entered the Death Glacier. Its speed was not something that the silver-haired young man could compare to. In just a few blinks of an eye, the white-eyed wolf was in front of the silver-haired young man. It turned to look at the silver-haired young man. It was a young man in his 20s with an ordinary appearance. He did not resemble Li Feng at all. The silver-haired young man also stopped in the void and said in a deep voice, "Why are you chasing me? I should be the one asking you this question. You haven't even seen us and you've already run away. I really want to know what you're afraid of." The white-eyed wolf sneered. The silver-haired young man said calmly, "I didn't run away because I have something to do in the Death Glacier." "So this is a coincidence?" The white-eyed wolf looked at him mockingly. "It is a coincidence. If there's nothing else, don't stop me." After saying that, the silver-haired young man bypassed the white-eyed wolf and continued to fly deeper. Looking at the silver-haired young man's back, the white-eyed wolf's eyes flickered. Suddenly, it waved its claws and the space-time laws rolled out. The void within a radius of several million miles immediately collapsed and turned into a giant ice crystal sword. It slashed at the silver-haired young man with the power to destroy the world. Ultimate profundity. The silver-haired young man was shocked. He stood in the void for a while and suddenly turned to look at the white-eyed wolf and said angrily, "Don't force me." "So what if I force you?" The white-eyed wolf sneered. Hearing this, the silver-haired young man's eyes suddenly emitted a blood-red light. It was as if he had turned into another person in an instant. The evil aura around him roared in all directions. "This aura? This gaze?" The white-eyed wolf's eyes trembled and said angrily, "So it's you, you little bastard. I've been so low-key. Why do you still want to find me?" The silver-haired young man roared and a shocking murderous aura rushed out of his body. The sky suddenly turned into a sea of blood. Bolts of blood-red lightning roared in the clouds like blood pythons, emitting an aura that could destroy the world. What a powerful fluctuation. Isn't that the golden-winged wolf king? It's really him. Why did he come to the Death Glacier? Who is that silver-haired young man opposite him? He has mastered the ultimate profundity of the law of slaughter. Wait, he looks a little familiar. I remember now. He's Qin Feng, the great demon who slaughtered countless creatures in the early years. Isn't he dead? Why is he still alive? The fluctuations from the battle between the white-eyed wolf and Li Feng alarmed the creatures in the surroundings. They all looked over with eyes full of shock. The entrance here was in the northern continent, so the people who came here to train were basically from the northern continent. Therefore they all recognized Li Feng. Ultimate profundity. The white-eyed wolf raised his head and looked at the rolling blood-red lightning in the sky. He was also extremely shocked. This kid has already comprehended the ultimate profundity of the law of slaughter? That's too fast. Although Qin Feiyang had given him some pills to open the door of potential, his comprehension and potential shouldn't be so terrifying. One had to know. Right now, Li Feng's cultivation was only at the sovereign stage. Crack. Rumble. Bolts of blood-red lightning poured down like a waterfall. Heaven and earth trembled as a terrifying murderous aura enveloped the surroundings. Do you think your wings have hardened just because you comprehended the ultimate profundity? The white-eyed wolf snorted coldly. The ice crystal sword formed by the void fragment furiously slashed out annihilating the blood-red lightning that filled the sky on the spot. Li Feng spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated repeatedly. This brother knows that little Qin Zi can't bear to kill you. Otherwise, you would have already died in the Nether King's hell. So while little Qin Zi isn't here, this brother will directly eliminate you to prevent you from harming the Sky Cloud realm. The white-eyed wolf's eyes flashed with murderous intent. The ice crystal sword carried a sharpness that could tear the heavens and earth apart as it slashed towards Li Feng. A trace of fear suddenly appeared in Li Feng's eyes. He hysterically roared. When I first came to the Sky Cloud realm, I did indeed slaughter many creatures. However, ever since I stepped into the sovereign stage, I have not harmed a single person. Why won't you let me go? Moreover, do you really think I want to do this? If there were other shortcuts, I wouldn't have harmed those innocent creatures. I just want to become stronger and find Long Zun's family to avenge the villagers of Cloud Mountain Village. Am I wrong? Li Feng roared again and again. Although so many years had passed, the hatred in his heart had not decreased. Instead, it had become even more intense. The white-eyed wolf waved its paw and the ice crystal sword stopped above Li Feng's head. It looked at the ferocious Li Feng opposite it with its brows tightly knitted together. Chapter 3602. Why are you looking at me like that? Did I say anything wrong? Li Feng glared at the white-eyed wolf. The white-eyed wolf took a deep breath and sighed. You're not wrong. No matter who it is in this world, everything they do is to become stronger. However, there are other ways to become stronger. It's not the only way to kill the innocent. But this is a shortcut. You know my talent. Even if Qin Dage helps me open the door to my potential, I can't surpass Long Zun, let alone surpass Long Chun. I have to do this. Li Feng said. You know Long Chun too? The white-eyed wolf was surprised. Of course I know. Although you don't know where I am all these years, I've been paying attention to your situation all the time. Because in the Sky Cloud realm, you are my only family. No. You are my only family in this world. Therefore, I know clearly about the battle between Qin Dage, the first prince of the dragons, and the fire dragon on White Crane Island. Li Feng said. Only family, the white-eyed wolf murmured. No matter how much Li Feng changed, his feelings for them had never changed. He still respected them, loved them, and regarded them as family. Brother Wolf. I know that I've sinned deeply, and it'll be difficult to wash away my sins. Don't worry, after I kill the dragons and avenge my family in Cloud Village, I'll atone for my sins with my death. Li Feng clenched his fists. Why do you have to do this? Hatred has completely blinded your heart. Moreover, the people who slaughtered Cloud Village have already been executed. The dragons of the ancient realm have also been wiped out. You should be relieved. Now let go of everything and come back with me. As long as you sincerely repent, I believe that whether it's little Qin Zi or little lunatic, they will forgive you, protect you, and take care of you. After all, little Qin Zi has always regarded you as a younger brother. The white-eyed wolf sighed. Li Feng fell silent. He shook his head and said, I failed to live up to Big Brother Qin's trust and expectations. I don't deserve to be his younger brother, and I don't have the face to see him. Otherwise, I would have already gone to find Big Brother Qin when you all appeared in the Sky Cloud realm. Let's talk about it later. The real culprit behind the massacre of Cloud Village is Long Zun, because she created an unfair system in the ancient Sky Cloud Village. It's also because of her lack of discipline that the people of the dragon race became so arrogant and domineering, treating human lives like grass. She must pay the price for this. Brother Wolf, I beg you, please let me go. I promise you from now on, I will never kill an innocent life. Li Feng knelt down in the air with a plop. He looked at the ingrate with a pleading expression. The ingrate lowered his head and looked at Li Feng in silence. The white-eyed wolf waved its claws and shattered the ice crystal sword. Thank you, Brother Wolf. Li Feng was very grateful. Remember what you said today. You can't kill innocent people. If I find out that you don't do it, I'll kill you myself. In other words, this is your last chance. The white-eyed wolf said. I know. I'll do it. Thank you, Brother Wolf. Also say sorry to Qin Dage for me. Li Feng stood up and turned to leave. Wait. The white-eyed wolf suddenly said. Li Feng stopped and turned to look at the white-eyed wolf in confusion. When little Qinzi gave you the pill to open the door of potential, your cultivation wasn't enough to open the other pages of the pill mantra. So you haven't opened all the doors of potential yet. The white-eyed wolf waved his paw and several pills appeared. They were the pills to open the doors of potential in the Monarch, Paragon, Ninth Heaven, Imperishable, and Sovereign Realms. This. Li Feng looked at the white-eyed wolf in astonishment. Not only did it not kill him, but it also gave him the remaining pills? When I helped Princess Huafeng and the others open the doors of potential, I took some pills. I was going to give them to the brewers. Since I met you today, I'll help you to the end. Take them. The white-eyed wolf waved his paw and the pills flew to Li Feng. Li Feng looked at the pills and suddenly knelt down in the void. He kowtowed 3 times and said solemnly, "Thank you, Brother Wolf. I promise you again that I won't do anything evil in the future. Go." The white-eyed wolf smiled. At this moment, it was like a kind elder. Li Feng stood up and put away the pills. He turned and disappeared without looking back. The white-eyed wolf sighed. It was supposed to kill Li Feng, but it gave him the pills to open the doors of potential. How could it explain this to little Qinzi? When did it become so kind and benevolent? A moment later, at the top of an ice mountain in the depths, Li Feng landed on the top of the mountain and looked back at the entrance. After a long silence, he took out a face-restoring pill and put it in his mouth. Soon his face was restored. Whoosh! Right at this moment, an old man in blood-red clothes appeared. His face was quite old and his clothes were unknown. Even his hair and eyes were blood-red. He was exuding a shocking bloody aura. So this is why you didn't let me do it. It seems that you're sure that the white-eyed wolf won't kill you and will even give you the pills to open the doors of potential. The old man in blood-red clothes looked at Li Feng and laughed. Is that what you think? Li Feng whispered without looking at the old man. Otherwise? The old man in blood-red clothes laughed. Li Feng suddenly looked up and stared at the old man in blood-red clothes. His blood-red eyes were like those of a demon king. He grabbed the old man's clothes and roared. I didn't let you do it because I really don't want you to hurt it. Because I'm not lying. They are my only family in this world. Is that so? The old man in blood-red clothes was indifferent. Let me tell you, although you've made me successful, you've also brought me a body of sin. I can forgive you for everything else, but if you dare to hurt Qin Dage and the others, then don't blame me for being ruthless. Li Feng's eyes were filled with a ferocious light. He was like a beast that bared its fangs. The old man's pupil shrunk slightly. It seemed that he had guessed wrong. This kid had an inseparable feeling for Qin Feiyang and the others. Li Feng slowly let go of the old man in blood-red clothes. He looked up at the depths of the glacier forest and said indifferently, You said that you'll tell me your true identity and your purpose after I break through to the sovereign realm, right? Yes. The old man in blood-red clothes nodded. Then you better not go back on your words. A cold light flashed in Li Feng's eyes. He soared into the sky and disappeared into the depths of the glacier forest. Sky Palace. Along with the appearance of a space-time passage, the white-eyed wolf returned and landed beside Qin Feiyang and Madman. How was it? Madman hurriedly asked. It's Li Feng. The white-eyed wolf nodded. It's really him. Madman's expression froze. Qin Feiyang frowned and asked, Then where is he? Could it be that you can't stop him with your strength? Cough cough. The white-eyed wolf dryly coughed and said with an embarrassed smile, This big brother was careless and let him slip away. Madman and Qin Feiyang both looked at the white-eyed wolf suspiciously. In any case, his current strength can't be underestimated. Not only did he comprehend the space-time law, but he also comprehended the ultimate profundity of the slaughter law. The white-eyed wolf waved his paws and turned his head to look elsewhere to hide the guilt on his face. The ultimate profundity of the slaughter law? Qin Feiyang and Madman looked at each other. This was a bit unexpected. However, even if he comprehended the ultimate profundity of the slaughter law, it was impossible for him to slip away from the white-eyed wolf. After all, the white-eyed wolf had comprehended the ultimate profundity of the 5 strongest laws. At the same time, The woman and the others couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief in their hearts. Princess Huofeng asked, "Then where did he escape to?" "This is our business. What does it have to do with you? Don't talk too much." The white-eyed wolf immediately became angry. Princess Huofeng clenched her fists when she heard this. She gnashed her teeth and glared at the ingrate. The white-eyed wolf directly ignored her and looked at Qin Feiyang and Madman saying, "Let's get down to business." It was obvious that he was trying to change the topic. Qin Feiyang took a deep look at the white-eyed wolf and looked around. He noticed that there were many Heavenly Palace disciples nearby. He then looked at the woman and the others and transmitted his voice. "There are too many spies now. It's not convenient for us to talk. Come to Sea Lion Island to look for us later." After that, Qin Feiyang gave the four of them a set of coordinates and had the white-eyed wolf open the space-time tunnel. He then left without looking back. They left just like that. It seems like they are not here to cause trouble for the Heavenly Palace. They are here for that Qin Feng. Speaking of which, this Qin Feng actually alarmed Qin Feiyang and the others. I don't think he will have a good ending in the future. That said, these people truly abhor evil. For a Qin Feng, they didn't hesitate to travel thousands of miles to our northern continent. The Heavenly Palace disciples immediately started discussing softly. "Three palace masters, Elder Wang, don't you think you owe us an explanation?" After the space-time tunnel dissipated, a group of upper echelons rushed to the four heads and frowned. Even they didn't know that Li Feng was hiding in the Heavenly Palace. The middle-aged man in black said angrily, "We have our reasons for doing this. Do we still need to explain to you? If it was an ordinary person, it wouldn't matter. But this Qin Feng is a demon who kills people like scything flax. If you don't explain clearly, how will the disciples below talk about you? This isn't the main point. The main point is, once this matter spreads out, how will the people of the northern continent talk about you behind your backs?" The group of upper echelons was burning with anxiety. The heads were all smart people. How could they make such a fatal mistake now? The woman in palace attire was silent for a while. Looking at the group of upper echelons, she sighed and said, "You can help to deal with this matter. If it really doesn't work, you can use our name to apologize to the people of the northern continent and admit your mistake." "Palace Master, is there a need to apologize and admit our mistake?" The middle-aged man in black frowned. "After all, we were in the wrong first. We covered up a murderous demon. Of course, we have to take the attitude of admitting our mistake. I'm a little tired. I'll go back and rest first." After saying that, the woman in palace attire turned and left without looking back. Elder Wang, the middle-aged man in black, and the middle-aged man in white looked at each other and left as well. Chapter 3603. Sea Lion Island. Qin Feiyang and Frenzy stared at the white-eyed wolf. Princess Huofeng and the others stood at the side in silence. The white-eyed wolf looked at Qin Feiyang in frenzy and said angrily, "Why are you looking at me like that?" Ever since they came to Sea Lion Island, the two of them had been staring at him without saying a word. "Brother Wolf, do we look like fools to you?" Frenzy said coldly. "No." The white-eyed wolf shook his head. "Since you don't look like fools, why are you lying to us? Tell us what's going on." Qin Feiyang said angrily. Cough cough. The white-eyed wolf coughed dryly. Look, you're showing a guilty conscience again. Don't you know how many years we've known you? Do you think you can hide your thoughts from us?" Frenzy said with disdain. The white-eyed wolf glared at Frenzy angrily and glanced at Princess Huofeng and the others. Then, with a wave of his paw, a soundproof barrier appeared. Being so mysterious, it's definitely not a good thing. Princess Huofeng snorted coldly. She was very dissatisfied that the white-eyed wolf was still so guarded against them. Inside the barrier, the white-eyed wolf looked at Qin Feiyang and Frenzy and smiled embarrassedly. "Nothing can escape your eyes. That's right, I let him go." "Why?" Qin Feiyang frowned. "I was going to kill him. And I was determined to kill him so that I could save you some trouble. But when I heard what he said, I really couldn't do it." The white-eyed wolf sighed. "What kind of words could make you feel compassion?" Frenzy was curious. "He said that we are his only family in this world. And he also promised me that he would never kill an innocent life from now on. Actually, he has already done that. After breaking through to the sovereign realm, he has never harmed the northern continent again. The white-eyed wolf said. My only family. Qin Feiyang and the madman both fell silent. He also said that he was too ashamed to see us because he knew that he had committed grave sins. Furthermore, he also said that he was constantly paying attention to us and caring about us. Actually, putting everything else aside, this child's attitude towards us is quite good. Besides, the reason why he became like this is because of the dragons. The white-eyed wolf sighed. So you're saying that he's still thinking about killing Long Zun? Qin Feiyang asked. Yes. At that time, what he said to me the most was that he would atone for his sins with his death after we killed Long Zun's family. The white-eyed wolf said. Then where is he now? Madman frowned. Death Glacier. The white-eyed wolf said. Why don't we give him another chance? In any case, we are all in the Sky Cloud realm right now. Moreover, the southern continent, western continent, and eastern continent are now under our control. As long as there is news of him doing evil, we will be the first to know. The white-eyed wolf looked at the two and smiled. You let him go. What else can we do? Qin Feiyang and the madman looked at each other, and couldn't help but roll their eyes. Not only did I let him go, but I also gave him a pill to open the door of potential. The white-eyed wolf bared his teeth. Qin Feiyang's face darkened. The madman was also speechless and asked, What about the blood ancestor? Blood ancestor? The white-eyed wolf was taken aback for a moment before he slapped his head and said in annoyance, Look at my memory, I actually forgot about that old bastard. Alright, I'll give it to you. Qin Feiyang and the madman sighed helplessly. This bastard was indeed unreliable. The madman pondered for a while and looked at Qin Feiyang. Speaking of the blood ancestor, is Long Tianyu the reincarnation of the blood ancestor? Didn't I already read his memory in the ancient world? There was no information about the blood ancestor at all. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Then how do you explain the aura that erupted uncontrollably when he was in danger? The madman frowned. They had already verified this matter. Whenever Long Tianyu was in danger, a terrifying energy would erupt from his body. According to the Beast Lord, this energy was exactly the same as the blood ancestors. Qin Feiyang thought for a while, and shook his head. I'm afraid no one knows about this except for the blood ancestor himself. But Long Tianyu, Li Feng, and the blood ancestor must be related in some way. Let's wait. Long Tianyu is with us anyway, so the truth will come out sooner or later. The madman and the white-eyed wolf nodded. Shwa. Suddenly, a space-time passage appeared in the sky. Qin Feiyang looked up and saw 4 figures walk out. They were the 4 giants of the Heavenly Palace. They had left separately in the Heavenly Palace in order not to arouse the suspicion of the disciples below. After all, they were giants and they weren't stupid. Since Qin Feiyang had secretly asked them to come to the Sea Lion Island, he definitely didn't want others to know. Come in. Qin Feiyang smiled. The 4 of them looked at each other and entered the soundproof barrier. Qin Feiyang asked, No one knows that you came to the Sea Lion Island, right? The 4 of them shook their heads. Actually, when we first came to the northern continent, even we didn't know what we were going to do. But now I have a goal. The 4 of you should have seen the situation in the Tianyan realm clearly. The Dragon Clan and the Phoenix Clan have appeared one after another, and displayed a terrifying foundation. It's not something that we, the human clan, can contend against. Moreover, to tell you the truth, the core areas of the other 2 forbidden areas also hide the same mysterious race. Qin Feiyang said. What? The 4 of them were shocked. There are also people in the other 2 forbidden areas? The human race is in a dangerous situation now. Any one of the forbidden areas can destroy us. So the human race shouldn't be as scattered as before. We have to unite and face the unknown dangers together. Qin Feiyang said. You mean you want us to submit to you? When the black-clothed middle-aged man heard this, he frowned and asked. Because the eastern, western, and southern continents were now under the control of Qin Feiyang and the others. Only the northern continent was left. But the key was that they didn't want to get involved. Wouldn't it be better to be alone? It's not submission. It's an alliance. Maybe you're suspecting our motives. Joining forces to fight against the forbidden areas is fake. Taking the opportunity to unify the 4 continents is real. But I can tell you responsibly that I, Qin Feiyang, don't have such ambitions and I don't want to get involved in these troublesome matters. I'm just thinking about the safety of the human race. Qin Feiyang smiled. His words were full of sincerity. The 4 of them were silent for a while. The middle-aged man in white looked up at Qin Feiyang and said, "Your mouth is on your body. You can say whatever you want." "What do you mean? Hurry up and we're doing a thankless job." The madman raised his eyebrows. "Everyone knows that the appearance of the Dragon Clan and the Phoenix Clan is all because of you. Especially the dragons. They're coming for you. Now you want the 4 continents to form an alliance to fight against the 4 forbidden areas. If it were us, wouldn't you suspect our motives?" The middle-aged man in white said slowly. His tone was very calm and didn't seem to be offensive. But in fact he was against the alliance. The madman and the white-eyed wolf couldn't help but be angry. Qin Feiyang stopped them. He looked at the white-clothed middle-aged man and said with a smile, "It's true that the dragons and phoenixes came out of the forbidden areas because of us. But how much do you know about the forbidden areas? Maybe even without us, they would have come out of the forbidden areas sooner or later. Actually, my purpose is very simple. The human race needs to unite first. At least we'll have the ability to deal with unexpected situations in the future. Of course, if the 4 forbidden areas really don't have any other motives and just come for me, it's naturally for the best, because this way they won't implicate others. However, no one can predict how the situation will develop in the future. Therefore, it is best to prepare for a rainy day and be prepared for any eventuality." Qin Feiyang smiled. He knew that it would be difficult to persuade the 4 of them. But he was patient and could take it slowly. The woman in the palace dress pondered for a while and asked, "You mean if the 4 forbidden areas really come for you, you won't implicate us?" "That's right. This is also the reason why I asked you to come to Sea Lion Island secretly to discuss this matter. Because I don't want the dragons to know that you're too close to me." Qin Feiyang nodded. "Think about it. If we really want to drag you down, all we have to do is shout in the heavenly palace that you've allied with us. Whether it's true or not, the dragons will believe it. In that case, will the dragons let you go? We're doing everything for your sake. So please trust us a little." Frenzy added. The 4 of them fell silent with a conflicted look on their faces. The ingrate raised his eyebrows and sneered. "If there comes a day when the 4 forbidden zones really attack the human race, do you think that the Heavenly Palace, as the ruler of the northern continent, can remain unscathed?" The 4 of them trembled. Actually, the best example is the Divine Palace of the southern continent. They also want to stay out of it, but the dragons took the initiative to find them. What can they do? They can only submit. This is the disaster caused by naivety. Since we've already said this, I might as well tell you the truth. On the surface, the Demon Palace, the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, and He Zhongtian have all turned against us. But in fact, they're all secretly supporting us. Why are they doing this? That's because they have unconditional trust in us, and know that we're not selfish people. Qin Feiyang said indifferently. The 4 of them lowered their heads and frowned even more. Actually, you've all seen what happened during this period of time. No matter how we fought with the dragons, we didn't implicate the Demon Palace and the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. So, you should be able to guess what kind of person I am. Moreover, if you're willing to form an alliance, I won't treat you badly. Do you know why Princess Huafeng is with me now? Do you know why the Firefeng people lent me 2 ruler divine weapons? Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. The 4 of them looked at Princess Huafeng and the others in surprise and whispered, "They're from the Fire Phoenix race?" "That's right." Qin Feiyang nodded. "Then why are they with you?" The 4 of them were suspicious. "Because I have the first volume of the Alchemy Sutra in my hands." Qin Feiyang said word by word, his eyes shining. Chapter 3604. The first volume of the Pill Scripture. Hearing this, the 4 of them trembled. Did they hear wrongly? The first volume of the Pill Scripture was actually in his hands? Qin Feiyang said. "If you agree to the alliance, I will immediately help you open the door of potential. That's impossible. My heavenly hall, divine hall, blood hall, demon hall, and the Rogue Cultivator Alliance have searched for so many years, but we couldn't find the first volume of the pill scripture. How could you have found it? The middle-aged man in black shook his head. It's because it's in our hands that you have been searching for so long. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. The woman in palace dress said in a deep voice, "Seeing is believing." Qin Feiyang and Madman looked at each other and smiled. At the same time, they took off their clothes and two potential marks appeared in front of the four of them. The four of them quickly went closer to check. That's right. These were the legendary potential marks. And they were all opened. If only 1 or 2 levels were opened. It might be because Qin Feiyang and Madman were too talented. But if they were all opened, there was only one possibility, pills. Qin Feiyang closed his clothes and said with a faint smile, "You guys decide." Madman also closed his clothes and looked at the white-eyed wolf. His eyes flashed with killing intent, but it was hidden so well that the four of them didn't notice it. Besides, they weren't in the mood to care about this now. They were all deeply shocked. For a moment, the enchantment fell into dead silence. After a long time, the woman in palace dress gritted her teeth and looked at Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf. She nodded and said, "Okay, I agree to the alliance." Hallmaster? The three of them looked at the woman in palace dress in shock. Don't you understand? They are determined to form an alliance this time around. If we don't agree, only death will await us. After all, we know too much now. They won't be at ease letting us leave. The woman in palace dress sighed. The three of them were shocked. Qin Feiyang had already told them about his relationship with the Devil Hall, the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, Hizhongtian, and the first volume of the Pill Codex. If they still didn't agree, they would definitely be silenced. They couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. Unknowingly, he had already made a trip to the gates of hell. Senior is indeed someone who understands the big picture. Qin Feiyang chuckled. With a wave of his hand, a group of people appeared in the castle's cultivation room. The four of them scanned the cultivation room suspiciously. Ancient castle. Qin Feiyang smiled. Ancient castle. The four of them were shocked. Could it be the sovereign weapon? Qin Feiyang walked to the front of the altar, picked up his Qianquan bag, and took out a dozen potential pills. This is the pill that opens the door to potential. The four of them immediately stared at the door of potential, their eyes filled with surprise and anticipation. Looking at their reactions, Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "Before the opening, I have one more request." What request? The four of them were suspicious. Qin Feiyang said, "In this world, except for the people around me, I can't trust anyone." Although Qin Feiyang didn't say it explicitly, the four of them knew what he meant. To open the door of potential, they must be under his control. The black-clothed middle-aged man said angrily, "I didn't say this in advance. If you agreed to the alliance without hesitation at the beginning, it proves that you are indeed people who care about the big picture, and I naturally won't control you. But now you are obviously here for the potential pills, so I have to be careful. Of course, I also promise that when everything is over, I will remove my control over you. And I won't ask you to do anything just because I control you. This is purely an insurance." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. If he helped these people open the door of potential now, they turned around and went to the dragons or phone people. Then who could he reason with? The most important thing was, he had to be wary of these people betraying him at the critical moment. Perhaps in the eyes of others, his behavior was a little overbearing, but for safety he had to do this. The woman in the palace dress looked deeply at Qin Feiyang and sighed. "All right, I accept." "Temple Master?" The black-clothed middle-aged man and the other two looked at the woman in the palace dress in shock and anger. She even agreed to this? Did she have a bottom line? "We are already in the ancient castle. Do we still have the right to choose? Now we can only pray that he is really someone who is worthy of our trust." The woman in the palace dress shook her head and then closed her eyes. The three of them looked at each other, and a sense of helplessness rose in their hearts. Qin Feiyang possessed several rulers' divine armaments. With the Heavenly Hall's single ruler's divine armament, they simply did not possess the qualifications to contend against him. Thus, they all closed their eyes as if they were waiting for death. Looking at the four of them, Qin Feiyang, the black-clothed middle-aged man, and the white-eyed wolf couldn't help but shake their heads and laugh. However, they were already used to it. This was because when they controlled others in the past, they would also show such an expression. However, as time passed and they understood more about them, they would slowly become willing to follow them. Qin Feiyang formed a seal with both hands, and 4 slavery seals appeared and instantly entered the four's consciousness. Without any resistance, they were successfully controlled. Qin Feiyang smiled and threw the pills to the white-eyed wolf, saying, "Help them open the door of potential." The white-eyed wolf grinned and said, "Line up one by one." Although the white-eyed wolf's attitude was arrogant, the 4 of them were secretly relieved. They were originally worried that after they were controlled, Qin Feiyang might make things difficult for them. After all, after being controlled, they would completely lose the right to speak. Even if Qin Feiyang went back on his words and didn't help them open the door of potential, they wouldn't dare to say anything. Fortunately, Qin Feiyang didn't make things difficult for them. Qin Feiyang and the madman walked out of the ancient castle. Now the 4 continents are finally unified. The madman laughed. "You think I want to?" "No, I don't want to at all." Qin Feiyang shook his head. "So what if you don't want to?" This is what the young man meant. "Besides, with your personality, can you just sit back and watch the world suffer?" The madman curled his lips. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. In front of the madman, there were no secrets at all. However, did the young man really mean this? Li Feng's appearance made him start to doubt. Perhaps Li Feng was the young man's goal. The madman asked curiously, "Who do you think this masked de jure is?" "No matter who he is, from his actions, he won't be our future enemy. We might even become comrades in the future." Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment and said with a faint smile, "That's true." The madman nodded. Qin Feiyang released his divine sense and covered the devil's land. With a thought, Pei Dason and his sister appeared beside him. "Greetings, young master." "Greetings, Sir Madman." The two bowed. "I don't know when Dan Wangkai will return. Go to the cultivation room and find the white-eyed wolf to open the door of potential." Qin Feiyang waved his hand. "Thank you, young master." The two were overjoyed. After bowing, they hurriedly ran into the castle. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment and took out the sound transmission god stone. A moment later, He Zhongtian's projection appeared and bowed. "Young master." Qin Feiyang said, "Come to Sea Lion Island immediately." Sea Lion Island? He Zhongtian was stunned. After Qin Feiyang gave the coordinates to He Zhongtian, he turned off the sound transmission god stone. The madman asked, "You asked him to come because you want to open the door of potential for him?" "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded. "But the grudge between him and the Yun family." The madman frowned. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. "This is their personal grudge. No matter how they resolve it, it's fine as long as it doesn't affect the overall situation." The madman curled his lips. "You're helping the big shots of the 4 continents open the door of potential for them. You've become the child of wealth. There's no other way. To compete with the 4 forbidden lands, our strength alone isn't enough. Especially the connections the 4 great forces have in the various continents. This is what we need the most. Although there are many talented youths in the Sky Cloud realm, it will take a lot of time and effort to cultivate them. But He Zhongtian and the others are different. They have grasped the strongest law and profound, and they have abundant resources. We only need to help them open the door of potential." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. "That makes sense." The madman nodded and then frowned. "Then what about Princess Huafeng and the others? Now they know all our secrets. If they spread it out, it will be very bad for our situation." "Don't worry about that. Although I haven't interacted much, I can see that whether it's Princess Huafeng or the Fire Phone people, they are quite tactful people. I don't dare to say much, but at least in the 1,000 years we agreed, they won't leak these secrets. And after 1,000 years, even we can't predict how far we will have developed. So even if they leak these secrets, it won't be that important." Qin Feiyang smiled. "Haha, seems like I worried too much." The madman laughed. Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed. Plans can't keep up with changes. The future situation may not develop as we think, so we have to be prepared. Soon, He Zhongtian came. Qin Feiyang went out and directly brought him into the Black Tortoise world. When he found out that he helped him open the door of potential, the joy on his face could not be concealed. Half a day passed. The 7 people's doors of potential were all successfully opened. Young master, thank you. In the future, this subordinate will go through water and tread on fire for young master without hesitation. He Zhongtian and the Pei Dason brothers could not help but kneel on the ground and say gratefully. Qin Feiyang helped the 3 up and looked at the 4 leaders of the Sky Palace with a smile. How do you feel? It's like being reborn. Thank you. The 4 of them smiled gratefully. This is what you deserve. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and said, there's something I want to ask you. Why are you protecting Li Feng? It's really to cherish talent. You also saw that he comprehended the law of space and time at such a young age, and even comprehended the ultimate meaning of the law of slaughter. Give him some more time, and he will definitely have some achievements. The woman in palace attire sighed. Qin Feiyang nodded. From peeking at the woman's inner thoughts, she was not lying. He then said, then did he say anything special to you in the Sky Palace? Special? The 4 of them looked at each other, and lowered their heads to ponder. Suddenly, the middle-aged man in black seemed to have thought of something. He looked up at Qin Feiyang and said, he seems to have mentioned the 4 forbidden areas several times, but he did not explain anything in detail? Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf looked at each other. Mentioned the 4 forbidden areas. What was the situation? Yes. Old Wang also patted his head and said, this old man also remembered. There were several times when he privately asked this old man about the 4 forbidden areas. This old man thought that he wanted to go to the 4 forbidden areas to train, so I kept stopping him. However, he did not force himself and was very obedient. If I did not allow him to go, he did not go. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.